across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. What a day as we chew the fat over that big story emerging overnight. Keir Starmer says he'll keep on fighting following Labour's shock third-place finish in the Gorton and Denton by-election, losing a safe seat to the Green Party. Imagine that headline a couple of years ago. He ruled out resigning and called the Greens and Reform UK extreme. Surely he's almost finished. Really? What is your takeaway from yesterday's results? And at the same time, Reform UK say it will report alleged cheating in the by-election to the police. The chairman, David Bull, formerly of this parish, of course, says any suspected electoral fraud, including reports of illegal family voting, should be referred to the authorities. And he's on the money on that point. And the Ministry of Defence has asked Parliament for an extra £2.5 billion to fund Afghan asylum schemes, including the Afghanistan response route, which resettles nationals put at risk by an MOD data breach. That's going to go down like a lead balloon, that one. We'll have more on that story. Everything you need to know. We will bring you all the breaking and emerging news throughout the course of the afternoon. You will miss absolutely nothing. So what is the significance? What is your takeaway from this result yesterday? I want your calls on that. 0344 499 1000. Now, you can always write the headlines after a by-election before the results come in. Everyone did well, of course. Everyone who didn't do well knew they were never going to do well because it's not really their seat. They never thought they were going to win it, etc. But last night, this happened.
Spencer, Hannah, Catherine, the Green Party, 14,980. I hereby declare that Hannah Catherine Spencer is duly elected Member of Parliament for the Gorton and Denton constituency.
And that was the Democratic result. Hannah Spencer is the new MP for Gorton and Denton. I've no doubt she's a very nice person, talented, amiable, all that kind of stuff. But she is more left-wing than Lenin's left leg, it should be said. Let's have a listen to what she said.
I can and won't accept this victory tonight without calling out the politicians and divisive figures who constantly scapegoat and blame our communities for all the problems in society. My Muslim friends and neighbours are just like me, human.
Well, if you didn't understand any of that, by the way, don't worry, she also speaks Urdu.
को गोटन और डेंटन एक जुल्म सियासतदान जीत सकता है अगर हम रिफॉर्म को रोकने के लिए ग्रीन को वोट ना दें।
मेरा नाम हना स्पेंसर है मैं ग्रीन पार्टी की उम्मीदवार हूं।
If you have to campaign in another language, by the way, we have a problem. That's maybe a separate story. I do wonder, though, listening to her emphasis on that particular element of her community, how many Muslim voters in that neck of the woods, and I'd love to hear from you, are that engaged in net zero, gay rights, LGBTQ plus education for kids, along with legalising drugs and applauding drag queens when they visit your kids' school. How would that, if you knocked on the door and went, you voted for Hat, really, OK, how are you on the LGBT? They'd slam the door in your face. Man alive. People are stupid, of course, we know that, but it was a sort of a Gaza thing I sense around her. I noticed that all of the candidates in Gorton, one of them, as I mentioned to Julia, Hugo Wills, who only got 29, he's a communist. He got 29 votes and came last. But as I said to Julia, it was essentially a communist that came first as well. Reform came second, of course. Let's listen to Matt Goodwin, the candidate.
Well, I think this seat was always very unique. I think there is a part of this seat that is clearly sectarian. We saw that with the Green campaign, campaigning in Urdu, campaigning in Punjabi, campaigning in different languages. And I think what we saw on the Reform side was a very focused, organised, disciplined campaign.
It is rather extraordinary if you look at the results on all of this. If you went around, and look, this is the same for any by-election, not picking out this constituency above others. There's always a confusion. You know, the confusion at the last general election, for goodness sake, when loads of people, almost out of nowhere, voted for Keir Starmer. I mean, that's the greatest unfathomable of our times. But when I look at an area such as this, particularly the Muslim community, who would be more at home with the Conservatives, you might think that would be the go-to place for that particular cohort in that particular constituency. Hannah Spencer rocked up first. Matt Goodwin for Reform. He was still over 4,400 votes behind her. Labour were about 800 votes behind Matt Goodwin. The Tories lost their deposit with 706 votes. The Lib Dems, similarly, 653. And then you get down to the monster raving loony party, who actually came next. Sir Oinkalot got 159, which was 5 more votes than Nick Buckley for Advance UK, who got 154. All of those people losing their deposits. So what does it mean? Is it earth-shattering? Was it sort of expected? Let's speak to Samara Gill, our reporter who's down there at the constituency. You were there for the count, Samara. I doubt you've hardly slept. What is the significance of what happened there last night?
Gosh, I mean, it is so significant. I've just been walking around the Gorton and Denton market stalls the past couple of hours, and you can really feel the love for the Green Party. Most of the people here that I've spoken to voted for the Greens, be it about 3 to 4 that voted for Reform. Of course, there was actually quite a big percentage that didn't vote at all, didn't know there was an election on or anything like that, which will always be the case in our democracy that we have over in the United Kingdom. But it's really, really interesting result, and it shows just how powerful of a force the Green Party is. They are probably the most left-wing party to have ever been elected into Parliament, and it seems like they're stronger than ever today. I'm here with Moheen. He actually is a Green supporter and a business owner in Gorton and Denton. He's actually quite a recent Green supporter. Moheen, what attracted you to the Green Party?
Yeah, it was one of the least evil options. One is more for the rich people, and the other one has been a bit of a dick, and that's it. Labour has been in power for the 2 years that I've been here, and they've been slowly moving people out of the market by raising the rents. For example, I believe in the first year that I was here, they raised the rent, and then on top of that added a service charge. And because of that, a lot of people from that side and that side started leaving, and then slowly, year after year, they've been just raising the rent. And let's see. Oh, my other problems that I have is I made a complaint. My sister was working here for like a day. One of the cleaners started flirting with her, and she told him respectfully no, and he called her weird for it, and that's my complaint to them. That's still not resolved.
So you've got a lot of issues. Did you see online social media campaigns? Is that what drew you to the Greens?
I've seen a lot of the social media campaigns by the Green Party leader, mainly the main guy.
Jack Polanski.
Polanski, yeah, big nose. Yeah. Just seeing his videos, and they really inspired me. He's actually speaking more factual things. He's caring more for the communities than.
You voted, you said basically, that you're a business owner and you've got issues with, prices of things. I mean, the Greens Party, they do say they want to put taxes up. How do you feel about that?
It's just based on what type of taxes they're going to put on. If they're taxing everyone equally, then I don't mind being taxed. If the rich people get taxed, okay. If I get taxed, that's fine. As long as it's based on something I should contribute more to the community if I don't, if that makes sense.
Well, there you go. That's a Green voter there in Gorton and Denton, someone that people like Hannah Spencer and Zach Polanski have courted, and they've really been able to court both the Muslim vote and the young people socialist vote very successfully with their very aggressive campaign tactics over here. And hey, it seems to have worked. I think Reform is also a threat. They came in at close second, as you said in your great monologue, Ian, and they picked up a very good amount of votes. But unfortunately, with the demographic of this area, or fortunately, depending on how you voted, it wasn't enough to cut it, and Hannah Spencer now rules this town.
Indeed she does. Samara, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the fella that you just spoke to us there. I did no struggle to understand that was a Green voter either. And did he say what I thought he said right at the beginning? I think he did. One was good, one was Samara Gill with us in the constituency. Dave Wooding is with us in the studio, political columnist, of course, over there at The Sun. You've been around the block for many years on elections, by-elections, Dave. I mean, they come, they go. Often you get these shock results, but once in a while it goes against what you might imagine. So, I mean, you can spend a long time on the political autopsy of these things, but what's your broad takeaway from what happened there yesterday in Gorton and Denton?
Well, for a start, it's the first time that the Greens have won a by-election, and the first time they've won a seat in the north. For Labour, they've held this seat for over a century. And it's the first time it's gone out of Labour hands. I mean, you and I were kids on the political beat when this was last outside Labour.
Absolutely. I thought it was interesting that Samara there in the report spoke to people who didn't know there was an election going on. Now, if you're one of those people, you should be tagged at that moment and never allowed in a voting booth again. Well, not that you've probably even been in one. If you didn't know there was an election in your neck of the woods, this was arguably one of the, the most high-profile ones we've seen for a while, because a lot rested on it, the Greens and their apparent rising star, God knows why, and of course Reform, who fielded a very strong candidate. It didn't quite do it, but he certainly came second, which for a seat that I think was over 400th on the Reform hit list, an incredible result.
I mean, that was a Labour seat all the time. I mean, and to have polled 10,000, it shows what a split constituency this is. It's called Gorton and Denton, and Gorton and Denton are like chalk and cheese. One of them is a highly migrant community with about 40% Muslim. The other half is white working class people who are traditional Labour voters, and all of them are fed up with Labour. That's basically, and they've gone their separate ways. What it also shows is, Ian, it's possibly the end of the two-party system. I mean, we've now got Reform and the Greens. Will the next election be fought between those two parties, really?
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
And I suppose, in years to come, this will go down, kids at school or students of politics will be learning about this sort of pivotal moment when it shifted away from the two-party system. And, I mean, I can see all of the merits in that. I can see why some people are grumpy about it, because it doesn't suit them in terms of electoral success, as it might have done once upon a time. All of those areas that were always guaranteed to be blue. You know what it's like in our neck of the woods, Dave. You can stick a blue rosette on a chimpanzee and it'll get elected.
Absolutely.
So, but that maybe is a thing of the past now.
Well, just right. People were saying when Reform started rising in the polls, yes, but come the general election, it'll fizzle out. They're not really going to get a foothold in politics. In the same way the SDP back in the 1980s, the new centre-left party, which was because Labour had lurched too far to the left. They won a couple of by-elections. Shirley Williams in Crosby and Hillhead, Roy Jenkins, Glasgow Hillhead. Again, it fizzled out. Now, with Greens coming in, we've not only got one insurgent party, we've got two. We've got one on the left and one on the right. And a lot of people are saying to themselves, we're fed up with the Tories and Labour. They've had 14 years of the Conservative Party and think they've failed with, goodness knows how many Prime Ministers they've had in that time. And now Labour have come in with great hope for change, and within less than 2 years, they see nothing has changed. And everybody is actually shopping around now for who they're going to vote for.
I saw a couple of headlines saying the greatest winner yesterday was actually Angela Rayner, because it carved out the first base of her path to power.
Absolutely right. I mean, Andy Burnham has been sidelined now. He didn't get that seat. He's now looking for a seat before he can get in, but it might well be too late. We've got down the line in just under 10 weeks, we've got the local and
I've never been
Assembly
more
elections.
excited about anything in years, Dave.
No, it's going to be absolutely incredible.
It's the kind of stuff that keeps me awake at night. I just can't wait for that night. It's just going to be so... I mean, it'd be fun if it turned out that it was just the Tories and Labour that won stuff, but I don't think it's going to go that way.
It's not.
Certainly not for the Tories.
I think for now, people in the Labour Party will leave Keir Starmer where he is and wait to see what happens then. That will be the new pivotal moment.
Yeah.
But there's 10 weeks of plotting that's going to go on now, because they're all going to be getting their leadership campaigns in order and deciding what they're going to do.
Let's just move to this story then, connected to Gorton and Denton. Apparently saw the highest level of illegal family voting at its by-election yesterday. Reform UK are set to report this to the police. Let's have a listen to their chairman, David Ball.
Would it have changed the outcome? My personal feeling is probably not. Should we report it to the police? Yes, because if it's electoral fraud, absolutely.
So this is, when they talk about family voting, I mean, this is essentially where more than one person nips into literally the booth, not the polling station, the actual booth. Suggestions that many husbands taking their wives in, saying, tick that box there, make sure you tick that. That's illegal, of course. I don't know how it even happens, but apparently it was seen in 15 of the 22 polling stations. That's quite a lot.
And this was a problem with the postal vote. There was a feeling that in some communities the patriarchal head of the family was instructing his wife and possibly children how to vote. Of course, if they're now going into polling booths and putting the cross in the box for them, or overseeing where they put the cross in the box, then that is electoral fraud. It definitely is. It might well be that some of these women don't know how to vote and don't read English.
Help.
Some of them are.
When you go into a polling station, there's always that group of people sitting there at the little desk who give you your card. Well, one of them shouted out, so one to a booth, please. Would that not just go hand in hand? Isn't that someone's job down there?
Absolutely, you'd think they would. I mean, it's not complicated, is it? And these on election day, whenever you go in, there's not queues of people going in. It's all very calm. I always found election days really quite calm after covering general elections. You go into the polling booth to cast your own vote, and there's 3 people sitting there. There's about 1 or 2 people wandering in and out, and a couple of people outside the polling station. It's very calm. So you can see what's going on. You can see somebody coming in, and if 2 go in a booth, it's blindingly obvious.
You always see one bloke there who thinks he's got the deciding vote, don't you? He's got that look on his face, like this is the one that's going to make a difference. I think you'll find.
If only.
Indeed. We'll talk more to Dave in just a second. David Wood in with us on the programme. Lots coming in from you as well. We'll go to your calls too. What is the significance for you of this election result? It's clearly much more. It's been made much more than the standard by-election. Of course, they come, they go. They don't always make big headlines, but this one, of course, was different. The Reform candidate, the Green candidate, that kind of gave it a new sort of booster rocket feel around this, and of course that's how it's transpired, because the Greens have won and Reform came second. Impressive voting base for both. What does it mean in the wider scene of things? 0344 499 1000. You can drop us a voice note there as well, or you can message 87222.
2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
23 minutes after 1 o'clock. Lots to talk about here. We're going to move to another story here, just away from the election for a moment. David Wooding is with us, a political journalist. This is about the MOD. The MOD are looking for extra funding. They need £2.5 billion, and this is to cover Afghan asylum costs. So they've asked Parliament for this extra money to cover costs of the scheme. And this is all really, David, connected to the kind of data breach which meant that lots of those Afghanis had to come over here that might not have done ordinarily because their life was in danger, apparently, because of the data breach. So, and now the MOD need extra money to look after them.
Yes, this email was actually dubbed the most expensive email in history because the cost of that leaked, the email being sent out with the spreadsheet with all the names of 100 spies, special forces, Afghan interpreters, cost the MOD £7 billion. And what happened is they tried to hide this money in the accounts in some way. They kept they kept it out of the public domain. Yeah. In the accounts. It was only there was a super injunction on all reporting of it by the media, and when that injunction was lifted,
it took a couple of years.
It did. That eventually came out. There was remember it coming out. What a bombshell that was when it came out for people who didn't know about it. Well, the MOD have now come out and said, well, we've managed to fiddle the books a little bit. Fiddle may be the wrong word, but change the books around a bit to take care of £5 billion, but we need another £2.5 billion. Yeah. This is all to house Afghan people under the resettlement and so forth. So that email has cost us £7 billion, and of course it's also in the Chancellor's black hole. It's part of the Chancellor's black hole.
So this is devastating in every respect.
Absolutely.
All because someone was a little bit careless with an email.
Yeah, and as I say, the most expensive
we never
email in history.
The most expensive email in history. Do we know what happened to that person? Because you don't normally get to know.
No,
do
you would expect them to have been disciplined and possibly.
Well, you'd think so, but this is the civil service. Yeah. I mean, you've got to commit murder almost to lose your job over there, haven't you?
He's probably working from home anyway, so
it's like nobody. I don't expect someone to go, oh, it was Tim over there, desk 7. Yeah. He's known for he's a bit lousy on the keyboard. Or known for pressing send when he shouldn't.
Absolutely.
I'd like to know more. Here's an interesting story of Hamit Koskan. You may remember this is the man who burned the Quran outside the Turkish consulate, has won a landmark blasphemy case at the High Court. Let's have a reminder of that incident.
What's this Quran? Quran is burning. Why you burning the Quran? Quran terrorist. Terrorist. Go from here. Religion of terrorism.
That's what he said. The religion of terrorists. Judge Lord Justice Warby and Miss Justice Obi upheld the overturning of his public order conviction. So he's now not got a conviction for that offence. And of course, there were other things that happened in this incident, of course, at the time.
Yeah, he was attacked with a knife, I think, and somebody got a suspended sentence for that. I think the most important thing of this is not just his the fact that he's been cleared of this by 2 courts now. It's the fact that we will not get a blasphemy law by the back door, because that was the risk of him being convicted on this. In fact, it puts the Director of Public Prosecution, Stephen Parkinson, under some pressure now, because why on earth did the DPP decide to prosecute for, I think originally the charge was going to be for offending a religious...
It was ridiculous, wasn't it? And even the judge, when he was originally sentenced, the judge said, you know, you set fire to the holy book, he called it, which is all of this old garbage that was kind of coming out. You think, hang on a second, look, I wouldn't advise anyone, you know, for arson purposes alone, to start setting fire to anything in the street. No. But, you know, there shouldn't be special measures because it was a holy book.
No, absolutely. And the point is, we had this situation only last week with a police officer confronting some Muslims in East London.
That's right,
who were complaining about a preacher in the street saying, this is our community, we don't like what he's saying. So it's the thin end of the wedge if you start attacking people and charging them with criminal offences for doing something which offends people. I mean, I wouldn't burn the Bible or the Quran. I think it's not a very nice thing to do, and it's a stupid thing to do anyway, to make your point. Yeah. You can argue your beliefs more but
to criminalise
it, it's
that's
just
a whole other...
And it's all about it's all about the trying to make sure that we have freedom of expression in this country, and that it's as simple as that.
Well, I'm very pleased for the man who, of course, was, as we alluded to there, attacked himself during this this moment with a knife. When I think the attacker got a 20-week suspended sentence or something.
That's right, he did, yeah,
which didn't seem very much for what happened. There was actually wasn't there also like a Deliveroo driver who went past on a moped and also gave him a kicking along the way?
Absolutely.
So nobody ever traced him.
You'd had the bizarre situation where he would have been probably locked up for burning a book, and somebody who attacks him with a knife gets away with a suspended sentence.
Extraordinary. Final one here. Winston Churchill's Parliament statue was spray painted last night. Proper act of vandalism, spray painted with words like Free Palestine and Zionist war criminal. Lots have been said about this. I find it bizarre. I mean, Andrew Neil, who we both know, but he made a point on this, David. He said the most surveyed and policed area of the entire country, and somebody was able to shin up a statue, spend a considerable amount of time graffitiing it before they were eventually arrested.
On all 4 sides of the plinth, I understand, and on the statue itself, with an inverted red triangle, which is a Palestine solidarity.
I mean, don't the police have those baton things, don't you? One of those round the shins would have got him down.
Well, you know, you'd think there's loads of officers across the road, and in fact up and down Whitehall and Parliament Square, you see lots of police officers. But yeah, I just think what's happened to the country when people are attacking a figure such as Winston Churchill, who was the man who gave us freedom, the biggest fight against Nazism and dictatorship.
They don't seem to get that, do they? So you've got this going on in broad daylight. You've got a candidate, now an MP, electioneering in another language and winning in a constituency. You think, wow, we are living in changing times, all right.
Definitely, but that was a symbol of what's going wrong in the country, really, when you see an iconic figure such as Winston Churchill. Now, if it was Margaret Thatcher there, where feelings are still running high among people who don't like what she did to some communities, you can understand why they didn't put a statue up in Parliament Square to begin with, much as many would argue she merits one. But Winston Churchill, I mean, he is perhaps one of the greatest ever British politicians in modern history.
Yeah, and it's you know, his position in history is quite clear. There's no ambiguity there of his role. I mean, people will have other ideas of other policies maybe, but is essentially, you know, his standout moments, as they would call it on Big Brother, the best bits, are there for all to see.
Absolutely, and you can take any politician. I've been watching the Blair, the Tony Blair story, and you know, with any politician, you see good and bad. Even the greatest politicians had some bad moments in their career, because politics is like that.
Yeah,
and no doubt Keir Starmer will have some good moments.
Yeah, well, up until May the 7th, maybe, then it's really going to go pear-shaped by the looks of things. David, thank you. Good to see you. David Wooding with us on the programme. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. We'll get the voices on from the various parties over the course of the next hour, including Reform. We'll be speaking to those guys shortly too. We'll find out what the Labour and Tory parties had to say on what happened last night as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one comes in from John. He says, Reform did well and the old deadbeat Tories lost their deposit. Ha-ha, says John. Thank you, John, for that. They did indeed, and they weren't the only party that lost a deposit. There were a few of them that walked away with their tail between their legs, including the Lib Dems as well. Advance UK, monster raving loony party, you might expect that, and a few other ones you might not have even heard of. It was a thumping result for the Greens. There is no doubt about that. Historic by-election victory, and Labour battered into third place behind Reform. We'll get some detail from a Labour side of this. Sebastian Salek with us in a moment. First, Councillor Martin Abrams, Green Party Lambeth. Martin, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. Congratulations to your party. I mean, it was an incredible win. It was also a sizable win as well, nearly 4,500 above the second place. Not a seat the Greens expected to win. I think it was 125th or something on the hit list. So trebles all round for the winning side. In this case, of course, it was the Green Party. What do you put that down to as a Green politician yourself? What do you sense is going on there? Was it Hannah Spencer or was it the Green Party?
I mean, I think it was a combination of both, and thanks for inviting me on, Ian. I mean, what we've seen in Gorton and Denton, it's not just seismic. It is earth-shattering, the result, because this was the Green Party's 127th target seat. And if this is repeated at the next general election, it would mean the Greens would win over 100 seats. Wow. You know, if that swing went the same way as what we saw last night, and you know, the candidate Hannah Spencer, who was an incredible candidate, you know, a local plumber who is clearly a grafter, and you know, just speaks like normal people, and I think that's what connected with people in Gorton and Denton, because she's from the area, she's lived in the area, she works in the area, you know, she's working class, she's a plumber, and now she's going to be a parliamentarian. So, the politics of hope just absolutely crushed the politics of fear and hatred peddled by Reform and the Labour Party.
It's interesting that it has divvied up like that. I do wonder, and look, this is not exclusive to the Greens or any particular party, when we see results that were not predicted. Once in a while these by-elections come along and, there's a sort of, wow, how did Labour took it off the Tories took it off the Lib Dem, whatever it is. I mean, could this be, not to in any way diminish someone's victory? It's a democracy, and Hannah Spencer won it quite clearly and convincingly as well. But could it be a blip? If you look at, she got a big vote from the Muslim community. For many people, that's fine. If Muslims feel more comfortable with her, they have exactly the same right as anybody else. But would they not be a little mystified with some of the other policies that the Green Party have beyond Gaza, LGBTQ, legalising drugs, goodness knows what else? That wouldn't sit very well with many of the people in that particular cohort, would it?
I mean, the Greens just won an election there. All you need to do, Ian, is go on Google and search for Green Party policies. So, I think to categorise this as, an election that was won with, inverted commas, conservative-leaning voters in a particular community, is kind of leaning towards sort of dog whistle politics in a way. Hannah's campaign was run on the politics of hope and change, with a local person standing up for their community, living side by side with communities from all backgrounds, standing up for the working class, something the Labour Party has completely rejected under the absolutely disastrous leadership of Keir Starmer. And this won't be a blip, Ian. As long as Keir Starmer is leader of the Labour Party, the Green Party are going to continue to gain massively from his politics. The Labour Party has spent the first 19 months of government obsessing and worrying about Reform UK, trying to out-reform Reform UK with, utterly disgraceful and divisive policies. I remember the speech that Starmer made about the island of strangers. But what this by-election result has shown is that actually the real threat to Labour is from the Green Party, and they cannot put that divisiveness, those disgraceful politics that Keir Starmer has championed, back in the bottle. And hundreds of thousands of people are flocking to the Green Party. We've got over 200,000 members now. We're a mass membership party. We can get 2,000 people out knocking doors in Gorton and Denton on polling day, and that is going to be replicated across the country. And there is going to be an even bigger result on May the 7th at the local elections, when the Greens are going to take councils across England and make
possibly
big inroads in Wales and in Scotland as well. So this isn't an anomaly. The Green Party are essentially replacing Labour as the party that stands up for working class people, that champions hope over fear. And Keir Starmer is basically finished.
Did you shed a little bit of a tear, though, Martin, for the Conservatives? They came in, of course, fourth, 706 votes. They lost their deposit. Even a hardened lefty like yourself must have had just a little moment for the Blues.
Well, Ian, this is the thing. I think this is one of the reasons why Reform lost, because people can see that Conservative politicians are basically being welcomed with open arms into Reform UK. We've got Suella Braverman, we've got Robert Jenrick. These are the politicians that were rejected by the electorate basically 19 months ago and dumped in the general election. And now Reform UK are parading them about like they're something new and fresh.
But they did do rather well. I mean, they were on your tail there, weren't they? I mean, the bookmakers were saying, look, this could be Reform, it could be Green. I mean, yes, it was 4,400 more votes going to Hannah Spencer than Matt Goodwin, but they were both up there. Between them, they hoovered up everything.
I mean, come on, Ian, it was a moment of total humiliation for Matt Goodwin. He's a liberal academic turned hard right charlatan, and And he's got no connection to the area. I'm from Tameside. I know that area.
I think he's got a connection to the area.
I think he delivered pizza. I think he delivered pizzas there at some point.
People in Gorton will always need pizzas. Thank goodness for Matt Goodwin.
He lives in Hertfordshire. He's got no connection to the area.
But that's not that unusual, is it?
He was parachuted in, spreading Reform UK's fear and division.
But he's not a charlatan because you disagree with him.
Into a constituency that has completely rejected, and I want to make a big shout out to my hometown of Manchester for rejecting that type of politics and welcoming the politics of Hannah Spencer and hope and change. And we're going to see that replicated again. What we need is a few more by-elections, which may or may not happen. The Green Party will be ready and will be winning more and more as time goes on.
Well, you alluded to it there, Martin. I mean, the 7th of May is only 10 weeks away. Can you quite believe it's only 10 weeks away? And that could be absolute car crash territory for the current government, that's for sure. Martin, thank you for your time, sir. Really appreciate it. Councillor Martin Abrams from the Green Party, Lambeth, that's where he represents. Sebastian Salek is a Labour councillor, Waltham Forest, and commentator. Sebastian, it was not the night that the Labour Party wanted, and they've had a shocker on two fronts, really, or maybe three, but certainly being beaten by another left-wing party, the Greens, but also being beaten by Reform UK. This is a disaster for Labour.
Well, do you know what? I was weirdly... I wouldn't say relieved, but I did think it was going to be a lot worse.
You lost?
Well, no.
How can you be relieved that you lost? Thank goodness for that. We lost. We got absolutely thumped.
No, it was a poor choice of word. I thought it was going to be worse than it was. That's what I'm trying to say.
All right.
And the reason for that is look at the last month that the government has had. It's been really tough, and you have to look at the context when you're going into a by-election. What I'm more relieved about, and I do mean it this time, is the result for Reform, because this is a binary. I don't care who came first, second or third. The point is Reform lost. And of what Martin said, the one point that I will agree with him on is that Matt Goodwin went into this with a lot of conviction. He really thought he was going to win it. And this is a man who quite often likes to say, I know how the people think. This is what everybody is saying. And he was roundly rejected in a democratic exercise.
Well, he came second. He got more votes than Labour. So whatever message he was imparting is more popular than the one you were imparting.
Well, again, I don't really care about what order people came in. I only care about who won.
But would you acknowledge that Matt Goodwin is more popular than Labour?
No, because this was the weirdest election where everybody was voting.
He got more votes, though.
Yes, I would acknowledge he got more votes.
So he's more popular.
No, I don't think that's quite the case.
That's usually how it works, though, isn't it?
Well, maybe, but I mean, you know what this country is like. It's a fast-past-the-post system, and often there's quite a strong tactical voting operation. And I think this was a real case in point. You had so many incentives flying around, lots of people voting for parties they wouldn't usually vote for. We got a green MP, for God's sake. When does that ever happen? So it shows that people are making unorthodox choices. Now, look, I hope for the people of Manchester, Gorton and Denton that Hannah Spencer does turn out to be a good MP. I hope that they're served well.
Well, I think she actually would be a good constituency MP for taking her politics out of it. I think she's, we often come across these cases. I had a lefty mate that used to vote for the Tory because they were really good constituency MP. So that does sometimes happen. So I don't dispute that. But, I mean, the Green Party being the face now of the left, that's a problem for your party, isn't it? It's a problem. I don't mean your party. It's a problem for your party as well. But your party, it's very confusing. They've got such a wrong name over there at Corbyn HQ. But it is a problem for Labour because this is the new left for many, the Greens.
Look, I think all threats are a problem for Labour. You should never rest on your laurels, and you should never assume that anybody is not going to be a challenge to you. What concerns me, though, is that to me, at least, the Greens and Reform are mirror images of each other because neither of them are in government and their job is to say things, to try and be seductive and attract voters with their promises. They don't have to do things. Labour does because they're in government. That's the reason they've taken a hammering, is because they are actually being tested. Everybody else is just words, and we have no way of proving whether those words carry any weight or not.
Does Keir Starmer, or can Keir Starmer take anything away from this, bearing in mind we're building up to the May elections? Keir Starmer might be a lot of a lot of things to people who don't like him. But the one thing he's not is stupid. He will know that there is an absolute car crash coming his way. Can he do anything between now and then to stop a repeat of what happened last night in Gorton?
Yeah, look, I think in May it's about local elections. It's not about what you think of Gaza, it's about who empties your bins. And so I think the challenge really is to make that local case. And in areas where they already have Labour councillors who are going for re-election, it's about standing on your record and showing what you've done and showing what another 4 years will get voters. And for new councillors, it's a different story, isn't it? It's about showing how you would do things differently. And that does involve making promises. But if you can evidence that, if you can back it up with credible sources, then that's the best way to play a local election.
Just a final point, some breaking news. Reform UK have reported cases of family voting to the police and the Electoral Commission after they, of course, came second. Nigel Farage has just made this announcement. Look, you don't like reform. I understand that. You're a Labour man, Sebastian, but would you support a police investigation into this?
I would follow the Electoral Commission on this. They are the body that organises elections. If they think that is what needs to happen, then that is what should happen. What I was disappointed to see was Reform jumping on this straight away and linking it to what they call sectarianism, which is essentially Muslims voting. And I thought that was a really, really sour way for Reform to handle losing this election, which they thought they were going to win. I would have hoped that they would have had a little bit more grace, but that's just me.
On that point, Sebastian, as ever, thank you, Sebastian Salek. He's a Labour councillor for Waltham Forest and a commentator. Thank you to him. It is interesting what Councillor Martin Abrams said to us, that he thought that Matt Goodwin was, frankly, a bit off to begin with because he was from Hertfordshire and not from Manchester. Although, of course, as many of you have pointed out, including Andrew, I thought the Greens didn't believe in borders. So what difference does it make where Matt Goodwin comes from? Yeah, I mean, if you come from Eritrea, the Green Party are fine with that. But if you come from Hertfordshire, that's a little bit suspicious, apparently. Thank you, Andrew. Politics of Gaza is what the Greens ran on, says Elaine. I can't have... Look, this is not an attack on a religion, but there's an irredeemable truth in this, isn't it? That the Muslim vote did well. I mean, with Martin Abrams going, oh, you know, and also Hannah Spencer in her speech talking about our neighbours, we all live together. No, you don't. You don't. These are divided communities, all right? There's no big... harmonised pot of love. There might not be enemies either, but these are largely separate communities. That's how it works. That's been the problem, and that's the problem that many people have tried to highlight. It doesn't mean you don't get on with it. It doesn't mean you don't know other people, that Muslims don't know Christians or Jews, and Jews don't know Muslims and Christians, etc. Yeah, we get that bit. But as for communities coming together, we're all one big, nice, beautiful, I'd like to teach the world to sing Kumbaya, and away we go. And I think if you ask the average Muslim in Gorton what their view might be on LGBTQ plus rights and policies, which is, of course, part and parcel of what Hannah stands for in her neck of the woods, ask them about gay rights, net zero, education in this area for kids, drag queens in school, legalising all drugs, I think they would run a mile. I said, I wouldn't vote for that. Well, you just did, because this woman spoke a little bit of Urdu in a video and mentioned Free Palestine and loves Gaza. I mean, really, that's literally what just happened. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Couple of points from Brad, who says, I think on any other day, the upholding of Hamid Kuşkan's conviction squashing would be huge news. You're absolutely bang on there, that sometimes just inevitably other stories take over. Brad says, it's a massive blow for those who wish to silence debate. Well done to Toby Young and all those involved. That's the Free Speech Union. Absolutely. It was a horrific stain on our judicial system when that judgment was initially handed down. Brad also says, I remember those days when the Green Party were an honourable political group who cared about our rivers, fought for our well-managed countryside and preserved our forest, and boy, didn't they love a squirrel. I miss those days, says Brad. Yeah, it's kind of just gone into this sort of madness now. Yeah, it's kind of an anarchic, student-y, left-wing thing. A big old loving of like-minded Marxists getting together, cobbling a few policies. Everything's cool. I hate the rich. I saw that Hannah Spencer, by the way, giving a speech. I think it was this morning. And she did the classic. I mean, this is so classic left-wing. I'm so stereotypical. I can't believe she even did it. She's in her speech. She rammed home the point. Our NHS will not be sold off to the highest bidder. OK, no one's actually selling the NHS, Hannah. Why did you say that? That's half-wittery, mate. You can't say that. Look, you're a plumber. You should know your way around a U-bend. So come on, do a reversal and get with the script. Pav is always with the script. Ian Harrow, how you doing?
Good afternoon, Ian.
What are your thoughts?
I resisted the temptation to ring into Julia, even though I vehemently disagreed with her.
Okay.
I'll try and keep it brief, but I've got a lot to say, so bear with me. Normally with by-elections, Ian, I mean, you've seen plenty down the years in your career. I think normally they're aberrations. You know, they might be relevant for a day or two, and then we forget about them, and then we carry on. I think this one is different for a few reasons. Firstly, and I think this is one of the things that people have overlooked, if you look at the turnout in that by-election, Ian, last night, 47.5%. That might not sound a lot, but if you then compare that to the turnout in July 2024 for the same constituency, 47.8%. We're in the same hinterland. It's not like normal elections where you say it was a low turnout, low apathy. You're on very similar ground. For then Labour to go from a 13,000 majority to a 4,000 majority for the Greens and Labour to slip into third is potentially huge, because what it is basically saying is that essentially on general election grounds, albeit I fully accept that this was a by-election, protest vote, everything else, that Labour can't even hold their own in territory, in a constituency, which they could basically win with their eyes closed in previous times. And I think the broader aspect there is that you now have the Greens who have basically parked their tanks on Labour's left, and in the same way that the Reform Party did to the Conservatives on the right. I think for Labour, it's actually even worse than the Conservatives, because the pressure will always be, when they want to defenestrate Starmer, will invariably be to move left, because they're not really going to move right, because there's not a great deal for them to go.
Yep.
The problem with them moving left, Ian, and trying to ward off, this progressive threat, if we can call it that, from the Greens, is that you potentially leave your right open. You then have the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives, who themselves are both squeezed by reform, potentially trying to occupy that space. And let's be honest, both of those parties are potentially better suited at the moment to occupy that instead of Labour. So there may actually be a rather bizarre situation where the Conservatives actually find some of their vote share and their bandwidth can actually be strengthened to incorporate the likes of Subri and these centre, the centre Tories that you had on your show a couple of weeks ago, because they've now got more space to work, number one. The other aspect of it, and I do find this amusing, because Julia had a caller on her show who was banging on about Restore and these other minor parties, Ian. I think the reality is, and I've seen online, people have essentially been losing their absolute credibility and losing their mind over the campaigning. Whilst I absolutely understand that people would prefer this to be in English and everything else, I think the salient point here is that there are many people in this country for whom English is their second or tertiary language. So in that instance, it makes absolute sense, even though you and I might find it galling and perhaps others might find it unpalatable, for people to target those particular groups in a language that they're perhaps more proficient in than in English. Now, having said all of that, I absolutely think that the way the Greens went about it, putting up Netanyahu and Putin and Modi, that was unacceptable. However, it was effective politicking. And at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, as long as you're not committing a criminal offence, and I'm not terribly convinced with how Reform have gone about that, Farage and co, but if they've got something fine, then it's all about winning. And at the end of the day, for her to win, with a 4,500 majority, and this is the other thing I'll briefly take up with you. I know you and a lot of your colleagues across the media platforms today have been saying that it was close, but sorry, I've been doing the data on this. And if you just allow me briefly to say this, I've collected all the data from the day that Hannah Spencer was announced. She has been odds on as the Green Party are with all UK bookmakers ever since. In every poll that has been published, they were either joint tie or within the margin of error of %. Yeah. So this idea that the Greens were ever not going to win it, I always felt, by the way, bringing a type of figure such as Goodwin in with his background was always going to be potentially difficult, because without sounding too haughty about this, it's a working class area. You're bringing a semi-academic, he's not really a proper academic, contrary to what he might want to pontificate, into that area. I thought was difficult, but that's where I think that the situation is and the summary is, Ian.
Listen, it was well put. Beautiful line on that, Pav. Thank you very much indeed. Pav in Harrow on the by-election. It was always, that is absolutely bang on what he just said, by the way. The Greens were always odds on to win this. More from you. What is your takeaway from that result last night? What does it mean for Starmer, for the Tories, or Reform? 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. Naturally, we're responding to events in Gorton and Denton last night. Keir Starmer says he's going to keep on fighting following that shock third place finish for a seat that's only ever been Labour's. Of course, the Tories coming in a distant fourth. He ruled out resigning, called the Greens and Reform both extreme. Surely the man is finished. I wouldn't expect him to resign right now, by the way, but we are only 10 weeks away from May the 7th, and that's where the big guns come in. Stand by for all of that. At the same time, by the way, Reform UK says it will and now has reported to the police alleged cheating in the by-election. The chairman, David Ball, says any suspected electoral fraud, including reports of illegal family voting, should be referred to the authorities, and in the last hour they have done exactly that. Both the police and the Electoral Commission have been informed. And the Ministry of Defence has asked Parliament for an extra £2.5 billion to fund Afghan asylum schemes, including the Afghanistan response route, which resettles nationals put at risk by that MOD data breach. We'll have more on that in just a few moments. 0344 499 1000. Angie says, question for Dave Wooding. Sadly, he's not here anymore. This happens on social media quite a lot, by the way. Somebody sends me a message that I don't really do X or Twitter very often, but I might see it 3 days later. Similarly, she's a question for Dave Wooding. In your opinion, if Burnham had been allowed to stand, would Labour have kept their seat? I was thinking that when Dave mentioned it. I think it would have been... I don't think they would have won. They might have come second. They might have come second. But I'm not absolutely sure they would have won with Andy Burnham. You know, Andy Burnham is not the Messiah. We should remember that. He's just a bloke that was once the Health Secretary 100 years ago. And that's kind of it, really. He was dined out on this kind of crest of a wave. It's Andy Burnham. It's Andy... Whoa, hang on. Andy Burnham? Yeah, OK, fine. He's all right. So I don't think they would have done, personally. And that would have been worse, almost, I think, for the Labour Party. Because it would have kind of shown that it doesn't matter if you change the potential leader, people still aren't voting for them. We'll have more comment on all of this back to you shortly. As I mentioned at the beginning there, the Ministry of Defence has asked Parliament for an extra £2.5 billion. This is to fund Afghan asylum schemes. It's a troubling story, and it's also a very expensive one. Let's speak with Simon Diggins, defence analyst and former UK defence attaché in Kabul. Simon, good afternoon to you. Just run over the nuts and bolts of this, if you would. The background to this story. Good afternoon.
Ian, good afternoon to you too. The background really is that when we were forced to withdraw from Afghanistan in 2021, a significant number of Afghans who'd worked directly for us or indirectly working in some specialist organisations were brought across to the UK. And that's continued to some extent since then. And of course, prior to that, we also had the interpreters who came across, the locally employed civilians who came across as well. So there was a number of people who were brought across this country, and they brought with them their families as well. When the numbers were quite large, though, particularly after August 21, when Kabul fell to the Taliban, there's some 15,000 came across at that point. And they've had to be resettled, they had to be organised, they had to be educated, provided with healthcare, and everything goes to that. And for whatever reason, that money has been put into the budget of the MOD, and of course, over time, it's actually grown. The MOD were told to hold it as a liability, and then now going back to the Treasury and saying, actually, we haven't got enough money for it, given everything else I think we're trying to do.
Afghanistan is always seen as a different story to other forms of immigration. Some people are uncomfortable with that because, yes, of course, you mentioned interpreters and others that worked alongside Allied troops and the British and the like. I think people mostly understand that, but the suggestion is, of course, that plenty of others tagged along as well. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I think I think you're right. The first bit of your sentence was absolutely correct. I think is seen as different. I mean, I absolutely recognise the challenges over migration and immigration, and I'm very much on the record of saying, you know, we need more control. But there was a recognition that these individuals had worked bravely and actually tirelessly for us, are under significant threat. When the Taliban took over, there were two groups of people they were after, particularly. They're after members of the NDS, which is effectively they're kind of these espionage services of the Afghans, and also after the Triples, particularly. Now, these are the individuals who are very highly trained, mentored by, in many cases, by our special forces, and they were literally killing them. They were refusing to capture them. I mean, horrific videos coming out from them. So looking after them and bringing them to this country has actually been the right thing to do. But I don't underestimate the challenge of it. Yeah. A, the numbers, and B, the degree of dislocation these individuals had felt, and then also the challenge has been integrated, because there's a big difference between somebody who's working alongside a British soldier in a very stressful kind of combat situation and bringing a whole family across to UK who may not have had really much to do with the British military or British society as a whole. I think that's the challenge. Indeed.
And of course, you know, many of these people coming over have had to do so for their own safety, sort of double problem in many respects after that email spreadsheet was made public, and that of course caused tens of thousands of people to think, you know, I can't hang around here. I've got a feeling the Taliban won't like me very much. On that point, worth getting a word from you, if we could, on this particular point, Simon, and that's Pakistan declaring open war with the Taliban. Is that a surprise move?
Not in the slightest. I mean, I think that one thing we often ignored is the extent to which Pakistan and Afghanistan have been at loggerheads. I mean, you know, the Durand line, which was the dividing line, was put in place precisely because of the division between them. The reason the Russians went into, the Soviets went into Afghanistan in 1979 was, again, linked to the fact that the Pakistanis had closed the border with Afghanistan pretty well in 1947. So a long-standing sort of distrust between them. Added to which, of course, the border is highly mountainous, highly porous, and the Pakistani Taliban, the Afghan Taliban, are the same people. They're Pashtuns, and they move from one side to the other. So the Pakistanis are frustrated by this. They used it in August 21 in order to effectively kick out the Karzai government and kick the West out of them there. So effectively, what they've got now is blowback from their actions in August 21, and the Afghan and Pakistani Taliban have united and have currently been killing Pakistani soldiers. I don't rejoice in the death of Pakistani soldiers, but actually in terms of the geopolitics of the region, that's what's going on.
It was only a couple of years ago, I think Pakistan expelled hundreds of thousands of Afghans, didn't they? And some suggest up to 2 million were kicked out of Pakistan.
They were, and again, we should give credit to the Pakistani government. They've had to deal with a significant number of refugees over time. When the Taliban were at the height of their power, before we kicked them out in 2001, there were over 5 million Afghan refugees in the country. When the Taliban came back in August 21, as you say, about 2 million plus moved across, and the Pakistanis have been trying to move them out. So I have some sympathy for the Pakistani government in terms of dealing with that and with the issue. But they should have. I have no sympathy with them whatsoever. In fact, they were the individuals who caused the Taliban to go back into power in August 21, and they're now suffering the blowback from that.
Indeed. Simon, great to have you on. Always a good analysis from you. More than appreciated. That is Simon Diggins, defence analyst, former UK defence attaché in Kabul. Thank you to him. Back to comments from you, particularly on that by-election. Andy in Cornwall says, I think there was a perception that reform would just continue to walk into power. The by-election will bring a sense of reality to reform. So the reform rise. All parties need to focus on delivering policies, not just mudslinging the opposition, as Starmer did today. Parties with no policies will lose. So goodbye Lib Dems and Labour, says Andy. Yeah, I mean, the Lib Dems did worse than the Tories. I mean, as if that's even possible. The Lib Dems fielded a candidate called Jackie Piercy in this constituency. Jackie got 653 votes. The Tories, Charlotte Ann Cadden, got 706 votes. Both lost their deposit, as did the official monster raving loony party with a candidate called Sir Oinkalot. He got He got 150. You can't do it without laughing. 159. Nick Buckley for Advance UK. Now, this is an interesting thing. Look, Advance UK would have said, look, we're not going to win it, and we've not yet got the momentum of someone like Reform. But is there any significance in that for those sort of more parties that are on the right rather than the left? And lots of talk about Advance getting together with Restore and both getting together with Reform, etc. Will any of that ever happen? Is there any significance on the Advance results? They only got 154 votes. They also lost their deposit. Does that matter in the grander scale to Ben Habib's party? Laura's in Wiltshire. What do you take away from it, Laura? Good afternoon.
Well, I'm trying to keep my pecker up, to be honest, Ian, which I think we all need to do if you're a Reform member and voter. But my feeling is that really this is a massive opportunity for Reform. And for the media and everyone to just take down this coalition of nutters in what has been elected in the Greens, because really they are a totally incompatible group of people. I mean, everyone's been talking all morning about the policies that this Muslim votership, if they really understood what they were doing, would not be voting for. I don't even know if Zach Lansky believes it himself. And I think it is a by-election, so it's a bummer that Reform didn't win. But I think it's a massive opportunity for us to shine the brilliant disinfectant of sunlight on the Greens and what they really are, which is just a potpourri of nonsense.
Do you think this is, in terms of Reform's position, because I would argue here, and I know if we ever say anything negative about Reform, somebody says, oh, you're so anti-Reform, which is bizarre, considering who I know hang around with them. Well, indeed, well, that's the opposite thing. If you say anything positive, somebody goes, you're like Reform FM. But Matt Goodwin, no, he might divide the room for some in that particular constituency, but, he's still got 10,578 votes. Indeed. That is significant in a constituency that's only ever been Labour. Yes, he was 4,500 or thereabouts behind Hannah Spencer, but it's close, right? I mean, he beat the party that represents the current government.
Totally. And if you listen to the brilliant David Ball this morning, late of this parish, he was honest, and someone said to him, well, why didn't you say it was going to be an impossible thing? He said, well, you can't go into it.
Of course you can't beforehand. Yeah, we're not going to win. Of course.
No. But, I mean, I think it is a massive opportunity, because I think the Greens are a complete distraction. I mean, the only slight worry is if Starmer is so desperate to stay in power, or Labour are, that they might team up with the Greens, and then on a numbers point of view, that's not great. I mean, that is a concern. But I think generally we just need people to be talking about what the Greens are really saying. And it's a slight aside, but this whole thing about people going into the booths together and family voting. My husband happens to be blind, and I've taken him to vote for the last 34 years.
Absolute scandal, Laura.
Luckily,
I know what you're up to.
And I can't. Yeah, quite. He has to trust me. But luckily, we always vote the same way. I can't tell you how rigorous the people are wherever we go and vote, whether it used to be in London or here in Wiltshire. They really want to check that I am doing the right thing and that he is wanting me to vote.
Yes, there's a genuine reason. It does surprise me that out of 15 of the 22 polling centres, they weren't able to, stop people gathering in a booth at the same time. I don't know what was going on there. Listen, Laura, I've got to run. You've been brilliant, though. Thank you. Lovely to speak. Have a cracking weekend, Laura in Wiltshire. We're going to talk to Reform Voice in just a moment as well and get their take on what's been happening. 0344 499 1000.
2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Margaret in Birmingham afternoon. Ian, Nigel Farage's right to investigate family voting. It's illegal, and if it's not challenged, will keep happening. Why didn't the officials stop it? You kind of just wonder how that could even be the case. I mean, it's just extraordinary that this is even a thing. But apparently, yeah, in 15 of... And this was independent. These are independent people that go... It's not like some reform people noticed it and got the hump. These are independent people that check on polling stations that everything's going as it should be going. And apparently it wasn't. Let's speak with Matt Barker, board member of Reform UK. Good afternoon to you, Matt. Dan, I do apologise. I don't know why I said Matt. It doesn't even say Matt here, and I know you're not Matt. You're Dan, so forgive me. Listen, we both got short names. I know how these things happen. Dan, good to have you with us. So listen, your response firstly, I mean, you came second, but it was a convincing second. What's your response? What's your reaction to that?
Well, it was. I mean, we of course we wanted to win. You know, we're in it to win it. But given that this was the Labour's 6th safest seat, and it was our 440th best seat from the general election, the swing that we managed to achieve was enormous. It just shows, you know, a seat that we shouldn't be in contention in at all. Basically, it's been a Labour seat for the last 100 years. We come second, and then add on top of that this revelation that's come out on polling day about the sectarian voting, which, you know, estimates are that it's roughly 12% of the vote might be affected by this.
Wow.
This family voting.
Do you know what happens there, Dan? Because I've never really seen this in action. And we know that Nigel Farage has now made an official report, I think, to the police and the Electoral Commission. I mean, what do they do? Do they cancel the election and say, we've got to do it again? What happens?
Well, I mean, it's unprecedented, isn't it? I mean, I don't know whether cancelling the election and rerunning the poll, I mean, that would be the ultimate extreme, wouldn't it, to run it again? Or whether there would just be sanctions against, you know, some of the electoral officers. I mean, what you really hope would come out of this is that any future elections from now on, particularly in Greater Manchester and in Manchester City Council, who ran the election, will be done with more rigour, more integrity, and more oversight. I mean, one thing that struck me was that the observers saw that people they witnessed the staff seeing it was happening and not intervening. And for me, and what this, you know, it echoes is the same situation with the grooming gangs, where people knew it was happening, officials who should have spoken up, taken action, did nothing, looked the other way, because it was culturally inconvenient. They didn't want to be accused of racism, and et cetera, and so all the abuse continued for decades. But the same thing here, subverting the democratic process, that can't be good for anybody.
On the wider issue of the result, certainly the result as we know it then, I mean, the Greens win. It was a fairly convincing win. Reform in second. You're still, I mean, bearing in mind Reform didn't exist half an hour ago, and they've come in and polled these amount of votes in a seat that I think was like 450th or something on the Reform hit list. So, I mean, to get up there in second place and beat the person who represents the current government, all of that. So, I mean, I tend to agree. I'm not being partisan here. I think by any objective measure, that would be seen as a fairly successful result for Reform.
It is a successful result, and Matt Goodwin was a good candidate. I mean, he worked really hard. He focused on all the important things. He was very grateful for all the people who came out and supported him. And the support from the members was overwhelming. We had over 1,000 people in the constituency yesterday. We've had about 5,000 come from all over the country over the course of the election. I've been up there every weekend and most evenings, to be fair, and there's been a real buzz about the place. So in terms of our, campaigning machine, I've seen it get better day by day. The next by-election we do, we're going to be really hot. I guarantee that.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a few elections coming up, of course, in 10 weeks' time with the local elections. A lot of councillors there, mayoralties, and, of course, the entirety of Wales and Scotland to play for.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, we expect to do well in the Senate and in Holyrood.
Yeah.
So watch this space on those.
Indeed. Great to have you on, Dan. Thank you very much. Dan Barker, board member with Reform UK. Thoughts on that? Mike in Manchester says, I'm in Manchester. I've been saying for weeks that the Greens will walk this election. It's a seat that largely consists of students, old hippies and Muslims. For Reform to get 30% is staggering, an amazing result, essentially a win, and points to a very good thing that could happen in May and the general election, says Mike. I think that's a brilliantly put email. There's no doubt about it that Hannah Spencer spent a good deal of time playing to that community that were never going to vote for Reform or the Conservatives. And then we're left with, well, is it Labour or Hannah? Now, if you look at Gaza and everything that's happened there and the government sort of, I say support for Israel, it's been a little bit lukewarm of late. But broadly speaking, Starmer was endorsing Israel's position. That would have naturally had an effect. And, this Spencer candidate spent a lot of time, Hannah Spencer, spent a lot of time talking about Gaza and integration and how we're my brothers and my sisters and we all live together in one happy house, which is frankly not true. But the sentiment that she was putting out there would have certainly resonated with that contingent of the constituency. This will be Nick down in London. Nick, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Hello there. These people family voting, so-called.
Yeah.
It's not family voting. That is a nice, cuddly phrase.
Yeah, it makes it look like a day out with the kids, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's a picnic. We're all out on a family. What a jolly. No, it's not. It's people being threatened to do things that they might not want to do. It's not cuddly and friendly at all. Yeah. I find it hard to fathom that we can't work out a system that stops this. You go in there, you give your name, your voting card, it's stamped, you're given the ballot paper, you're sent off to a booth, you're never more than 10 yards from the officials. You come out, you put the slip of paper into the box. It can't be beyond the wit of the officials to say, hang on a minute, there was half a dozen of you in there, or there's one bloke and some girl, and it comes down to enforcing our laws. And if you won't enforce our laws on anything, then the system falls apart. The worrying thing is that our society, I think, is sadly falling apart. And it's falling apart, in my view, simply because the powers that be will not enforce the laws that we all agree will live by.
And there it is, succinctly put by Dave in London. Thank you, Dave. Really appreciate that. Sorry, was it Dave? No, Nick in London. This is Dave in London. Dave, how you doing?
Hi, Ian. How are you, mate?
I'm good as gold. What's going on?
I wish you'd... I know that Salek guy, Sebastian, whatever his name is the only bloke you've got to talk to on GB News. But does he actually do any work?
We can't talk to others, but there's very few that will speak as well as he does.
Yeah, getting a bit tired of him coming on every 5 minutes. He's on GB News this morning. Now he's on your show.
He's still going?
If I was Walthamstow Council, I'd be certainly voting this bloke out.
He's never at work. He's always on the telly, on the radio.
There, mate. He's never there.
Good observation, Dave. I love it.
Anyway,
Go on.
I know we've been talking a lot about the sectarian vote, as it were, but I'm wondering how big the student vote is as well, because we all know that dotty students will all be running around with their little green T-shirts on with a Che Guevara picture on it going, look at me, aren't I a revolutionary?
And that kind of desert wear neck scarf, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, exactly, But I'm curious. I thought I saw somewhere that it was like 30 to 40% of the vote of the electorate in not
what was students?
Never don't know which. I'm sure I saw that somewhere, and I thought, wow, that's massive.
That would seem massive, but we'll try and authenticate that figure.
And this is the other thing. I think that you notice this in general elections, especially when they happen in May. Because when they happen in May, little Sebastian and all of them, they're all at college, right? So that's why I always feel sorry for the people in Brighton Pavilion, because the poor locals there must think, all I've got is thousands of students here all day voting for things they want. Then come June, July, they all go back home to mummy and daddy in Kent. And I'm left with the carnage of them being here. And I was really glad Sunak called the election in July. I know it didn't do him any good, and he should have done it in November.
Yeah.
But by calling it in July, little Sebastian and them, they're all now off on some little trip round the world to
South America, building themselves some huts.
Yeah, so they're not down in the local area. And I don't like all this. When it's student town, all the students go and hijack the vote when they won't be living there anyway come 2 or 3 years when they finish their course. And I just find that pretty bad. And I think what Reform need to do, and I'm sure they are, they need to work out which wards and which councils have got a load of students, because they'll all be down there waving their little Palestinian flags, doing their little voting, and that'll tip the councillors for those wards to green, I think. But
do you think if that was I mean, you also have to factor in, and this is largely the Labour element of the story, that it's not unusual for the government of the day to get a kicking in a by-election, and quite often, whether it's Tory, Labour, whoever, come the general election, people revert back to where they really like to vote for, and that would be, in this case, Labour. I'm not sure that's going to happen with this seat. I think there's a wider significance and a devastating significance for Keir Starmer here.
Yeah, well, if you look at the 2024 election results in that area, although Labour won 50%, your old mate George Galloway, he got 10%. So if you added him to the Green Party, who got 13%, there was 24% greeny Galloways in 2024. So they're already 25% of the vote, because obviously Galloway stood down, right, and just said...
Yeah, are you talking about Gorton and Denton here?
Yeah, Gordon and Denton. Yeah, so I think that... I think when you get to the election... No, I think Gorton and Denton will go back to Labour for the election when the local... Well, you think about it, right? The students have just voted for a party that wants to abolish landlords, and I suspect most of the landlords in Gorton and Denton are from the Muslim community.
I tell you what, I do a lot of work, as many of you know, with landlords and the Landlord Investment Show and those kind of events, and there is a massive Muslim landlord contingent. So you kind of wonder again, but then that comes down to the question of, did you know what you were voting for? I mean, the Green Party are full of LGBTQ rights. They want to legalise all drugs, criminalise landlords. I don't know how that really sits if you sat down with some of these people and said, did you not know that when you voted for them? But we live in confused times, Dave. We're all upside down. It's Alice in Wonderland with booster rockets on at the moment. Dave, thank you very much indeed. Dave, down in London. More comment from you on the way. Loads to get through. 0344 499 1000. It's just gone 2:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, we're back. Sorry, I was just munching on a love heart. We have, on a Friday, there's a little snackette thing that happens here at Talk Towers, across all radio stations. And on the reception, Joe, who runs the reception, wheels out the Haribos and the sugary delights and the treats. And the only time, I say this time and time again, you've got Finn over there, our producer, you've got Amy on the deck, they are stuffing themselves with sugary Haribos. And I get like 90 seconds to eat a small packet of little love hearts. That's called workplace bullying. Anywhere else? That's what I'm up against here. And on a day like today, of course, when we're responding to a massive story, a man needs his sugar. Last night, of course, it was a huge result for the Green Party. Was it predicted? Well, yes, actually, it was predicted. What about the other elements to this story? Reform UK. How sure were the predictors and the projectors on that result? They came second, 4,500 or thereabouts behind the Greens, but nonetheless beating Labour, beating the Tories and beating the Lib Dems. Let's get a word with Kevin Schofield. Kevin, of course, is political editor at HuffPost UK. Good afternoon to you, Kevin.
Hi there, Ian.
I mean, we always, in our field, in our world, we look forward to by-elections and stuff ordinarily when no one else does. But this was the popcorn seat, wasn't it? I mean, this was everybody was going, right, what the heck's going to happen here? And fascinating to see, arguably for the first time, really, a seat where we're not talking about will it be the Lib Dems, will it be Labour or will it be the Tories? This was only ever between two parties.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those weird, genuinely unpredictable. I mean, I've veered from thinking Labour might just sneak it to, oh, the Greens will probably do it, or maybe Reform could come through the middle if the left of centre vote is split. But in the end, it was an astonishing result for the Greens. But it's interesting, you mentioned the Lib Dems there. I mean, it shouldn't be forgotten that in years gone by, the Lib Dems would have been the natural home of the left of centre protest vote, and their vote just was nowhere last night. Jack Palahniuk and the Greens have managed to seize that mantle from the Lib Dems. I think Ed Davies got some worries today. Nothing compared to Keir Starmer, of course. You're speaking to Labour MPs today, they are, if they were depressed before last night, they're completely at the end of their tether now. They've given up on Keir Starmer. There's still one or two loyalists, but by and large, they've given up, and it's a question of when he goes rather than if.
Yeah, I mean, look, by-elections happen, and not that uncommon for the government of the day to lose a by-election, often regaining it at a general election. Why is this more significant?
Well, there's a few factors. One, it's only 18 months ago since Labour won this seat with a majority of nearly 13,500.
Yeah,
so
true.
To collapse so quickly in such a short space of time is remarkable. The fact that the Greens won it at all. Now, the Greens had never won a Westminster by-election before, so that makes it significant. Labour's whole strategy throughout the campaign, and actually the broader electoral strategy looking ahead to the general election, is only they can stop reform, only they can stop Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister. Well, that was blown to smithereens last night, really, because voters turned around and said, no, we don't agree with you, we're going to vote Green. And also Reform, I think, there's questions to be asked there as well. Reform did have high hopes of winning it. Now, I know Nigel Farage and Matt Goodwin have concerns about how the vote was conducted, but I don't think that explains the size of the Greens' victory. 4,500 is a pretty chunky majority in a by-election. So I think maybe Reform have got to go away and have a think about how they approach by-election like this in the future as well.
It could be. I mean, arguably, there is some suggestion that maybe Matt Goodwin was a candidate that felt quite distant from some of the constituents. I mean, it could have been specifically on that personality. But I guess conversely, Kevin, it would be, Reform didn't exist not that long ago, and here they are coming second, beating the Conservatives and Labour. And David Bull, doing the media rounds today, as I'm sure you saw, was saying actually Reform should be quite pleased with this.
Yeah, listen, I'm not trying to downplay the fact that they had a better night than Labour. I'm just saying that they did genuinely think they had a shot at it and ended up coming well short. I think you're right about Matt Goodwin. I think he is well known in the Westminster Village. He's been in and around the political scene at Westminster for quite some time. I'm not sure whether or not he was the best candidate. If you look at who ended up winning, it was a quite working class woman, a plumber, whereas Matt Goodwin is an academic. So you wonder whether they chose the right candidate there or not. But listen, there's no getting away from the fact the big loser last night was undoubtedly Keir Starmer. Labour genuinely thought at the beginning of this week that they didn't have it in the bag, but they thought that they had a really good chance. That's why Keir Starmer was there on Monday. It's very unusual for a Prime Minister to turn up at a by-election that they end up losing.
This is this is a kicking for the government. There's no doubt about that. And what do you make of these? It's now been reported to the police. Nigel Farage and Reform talking about this family voting problem, which was spotted not by Reform but by those that inspect polling stations to see if everything is running properly. And 15 out of the 22 that they visited, they apparently observed this thing called family voting, where one or more than one member of a family or more than one person is standing there in the same polling booth, which is contrary to electoral law.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very concerning. You're right, it is illegal. It should not be happening. It is against the law. And it's also the fact that it appears to be on the rise. These observers, independent observers, noted that they'd seen it happen in Runcorn at that last by-election, but nothing like on the scale of happened yesterday in Gorton and Denton. So yeah, that is concerning, and I think it's something that the electoral authorities are going to have to really think hard on and come up with a way of making sure it doesn't happen again in future.
Indeed. Kevin, thank you very much indeed. Always great to get your views on these things. Kevin Schofield, political editor at HuffPost UK. The significance of last night. People will pull this one apart forever. Because it was the first time we'd really seen, I think, there's been a lot of talk about the Greens, but when we've actually seen a proper election, not just opinion polls, this whole thing of, the rise of the Green Party, the rise of Reform, it was really put to the test in a way that we hadn't been able to kind of crystallise in quite this way. So there it was, loud and clear for everybody to see. Reform versus the Greens. This is the new left-right party, parties. I'm not sure that's fully true, but that's definitely how it's been defined. And by the way, is there anybody listening to this who voted in last night's election? And did you vote for Sir Oinkalot from the Monster Raving Loony Party? Because out there's 159 of you out there somewhere. Somebody, and they can't all be Sir Oinkalot's mates, because most people haven't got 159 mates, so they must have in that constituency. So there must be somebody out there somewhere voted for Sir Oinkalot from the Monster Raving Loony Party. Is that you? Chris is in Epsom. What have you got for us, Chris? Good afternoon.
How can you say people haven't got 159 friends when you've got thousands?
Well, that's a nice way to put it, Chris. I appreciate that. I don't know whether Sir Oinkalot... I don't even know what Sir Oinkalot looks like, although I did look up during the news Hugo Wills, who was the communist candidate, expecting to find a kind of classic commie oddball. But he actually looks a bit more like Phil Mitchell than a commie oddball, so kind of. He had quite a kind face. I thought he's probably a nice guy. But he didn't get many votes either. He only got 29.
I was a sad bugger. I stayed up all night watching it.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like my politics.
I know. And it's interesting because it's the kind of thing I thought to myself literally last night about 11 o'clock. And they were talking about, there's 3 or 4 hours to go. I thought, I can't do it. I can't stay up for it. But I was awake early, so I copped it all fairly early doors. What's your interpretation of events, Chris?
Right. This is really serious now, Ian. It's not sour grapes with Nigel whatsoever. The people that were working for the Electoral Commission that couldn't step in and do anything, they count up. They make it 12% of family voting. But the big thing on that is that there was 35% postal votes. Now, the national average is 20%. So I then dived in and took the research. The best you can get is off the 2021
census.
Census, yes, it comes around every 10 years. And I've heard people say that that's too long in with our timescales now, and I think it is. But what is blazingly obvious, right, is that these postal votes are being packed. Every Muslim area, all right, I think I've got them all listed. I've got the whole lot. All of them have 25 to 35% postal voting, whereas the national average is 20%.
Okay.
Now, I think the way that this has got to be dealt with, all right, because it's damaging our democracy. Now, we've got to be fair to everyone, all right? Now, I think what should happen is that everybody should reapply it. They should all be cancelled now, the postal votes. The only people that should get them are the disabled, those in care homes, or those working emergency services where they can't get. There's not many people that can't get.
Okay.
If they live in that area, can't get to a polling station. You've got what have you got? You've got 15 hours where it's open. So, and that would stop a lot of it.
What do you extrapolate from the research you did then, Chris, in terms of what the result would have looked like if you remove the postal vote?
Oh, nobody knows because that's a bit of putting your finger in the wind.
Well, indeed, but I mean, if the suggestion is that certain communities are more likely to use the postal vote system, then that might get us in. But then, of course, we don't know, who those communities necessarily are.
There's a couple of other things that we need to do as well.
Apparently, there's 40-odd% students in that constituency.
Yeah.
Which I find extraordinary. I didn't know anywhere had that amount of students. Bournemouth is pretty up there for students. I know that. So during the summer, the population is halved.
Yeah. Well, listen. There's two other things that we need to do with our voting in this country to make our democracy stronger for everyone, and that is we need to take a leaf out of the French book and ban polls 4 weeks before the election. They can do polling up to 4 weeks before, but then after that, no polling. So there's no information being given out to direct tactical voting. People have to vote for who they want.
Right.
And also...
But then how do you stop a news organisation, going around the high street in Epsom, asking a bunch of people... you might get a good, diligent journalist who could ask 200 people over the course of a day and then say, oh, we spoke to 200 people, they said this.
Well, yeah, but if he publishes it or webs it, he's broken the law. And
okay.
That should be a fine or possibly even a jail sentence.
Get on to the Ofcom people.
Because it's our democracy we're talking about, Ian.
Okay, so you think the polls give false information, or that they sway people?
They sway people. Because that's the only information they can get.
But what about newspapers, though? Obviously, we can't, as I'm sure you're aware. I was having a conversation about this last night. It's infuriating that here we are in 2026. On the day of an election, we can hardly even mention that the election is going on. It can happen in the news, but we can't go further than that. And yet, a newspaper, and many of them are in this very building, as you know, could actually write on the front page, vote Green, vote Labour. But I can't even discuss it at all on the day of an election.
I know there's some stuff that goes on like that. And
what's that all about? Seriously?
Yeah, but listen to me. If we do if we do the postal vote thing, I've said, which is to make everybody reapply and only certain people get it, and we do the no publication of any polls in a newspaper, on the web, nothing, not on radio or TV, it's an offence. And then we take a leaf out of the Australian book, all right, where it's legally required for you to vote or you get a large fine. Because even with this country falling apart as it is, 50% of people didn't go to the polls, did not go and vote.
Yeah,
listen, let me finish.
Go on, Chris, go on.
I lost a lot of my family in World War One. I lost my grandfather in World War Two and his brother. My grandmother brought my mum and her sister up on her own when there was no social services, working 3 jobs, and sometimes it wasn't enough to put food on the table, so she would pawn their winter coats and then go out at 4 a.m. and scrub steps to put food on the table. Right? And that was to keep the German jackboot off of us, so we could have the freedoms that we have. People are not realising that I don't do politics. I'm not going to get. I'm not going to vote.
I get it, but there were people. Apparently, Samara, our reporter, spoke to people in the constituency that didn't even know there was an election, Chris. I mean, where would you have to be? Of all of the elections, this particular one has rumbled on for the last couple of months, and to live there and not know. You should be tagged and removed from the democratic process forevermore. Chris, listen, I've got to run. That's a brilliant call, though. Loved chewing this one over with you. Thank you. Chris in Epsom with us here on Talk. Over to you for more comments in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. Oh, I think we've got the voice of doom. Day 3 as well. It's going to be a little belter, this one. Stand by for that coming up on Talk.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It has just gone 5 to 3. Do we do the voice of doom? We're going to talk to George in Dundee in just a second. Don't go away, George. Voice of Doom, this is the mystery voice, but it's political. So you're looking for a politician, left-wing or right-wing, dead or alive, young, old, you name it. I think it's quite a tricky one, but, you know, we've said that before, and these things have been guessed quite swiftly. Very simple question. Who is this?
Expertise and knowledge.
And let's hear that again.
Expertise and knowledge.
I mean, it does a little bit... does sort of sound like somebody from a Young Offenders Institute, doesn't it? So tell us, Timmy, what do you need when you leave prison?
Expertise and knowledge.
That's right, Timmy. But it's not. It is a politician. Hear it again.
Expertise and knowledge.
Who is that? 87222 if you think you know, and if somebody guesses it correctly, we of course announce that after the headlines, which come at 3 o'clock. George is in Dundee on the by-election. George, what are you thinking? Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian. You've got me laughing there at your description of the Voice of Doom.
I know, yes. It's a terrible libel of the poor person who owns the voice.
Well, what he thinks, I mean, let's face it, Ian, it's not the Green Party that everybody knows that won that last night. It's the LGBT Islamist Alliance that won that election last night. And I think it's pretty seismic, because I think there is now no more red wall. What we now have is the first brick in the Islamic wall right across the middle of England. To think, Ian, we have a party who think a woman can have a penis, cozying up to a group, a religious group, who think a woman shouldn't be seen whether they've got a penis or not got a penis, beggars belief. Belief.
It's interesting. I can't work out how that has been given a free pass in this. There's none of those, you know, I'm not talking about people who are not mad Islamists, just the average Muslim family would not want to be engaged into... in fact, I was talking to a Muslim the other day on this very issue of education in school, of kids' education, and she was saying to me she is disturbed by what her child might learn in school. She says it's not what we, you know, favour, we don't like that. She was talking about her kind of culture, and I said to her, I said, well, rest assured, we don't go a bundle on that stuff either. No. But she was making the... So if she knew, how can so many people in that constituency not have picked up that Hannah Spencer, this new Green MP, talked quite a lot about all this kind of stuff, plus the net zero, plus the legalising drugs. I mean, come on.
I know. And you know where my disdain falls for this? It falls on the Labour and the Conservative Party, who over the last 20 to 25 years have facilitated this kind of thing. And the rise of this nonsense in this country. I mean, I heard the guy getting interviewed by your correspondent on Talk there in the constituency earlier on in your show.
He was a bit odd, wasn't he?
Well, he basically voted for the Green Party because the rent on his pitch had went up, which was nothing to do with the
exactly right.
And somebody had tried to chat up his sister. I mean, what in God's name is going on in this country?
You just put that brilliantly. You just articulated that, George, just brilliantly. I've lost it, mate. I've lost it.
That's what he said. I mean, he worked for them because the pitch on his rent had went, the rent on his pitch had went up, and somebody had tried to chat up his sister at the council. Good God.
Yeah, and I'd like to know... I'd like to know what the Green Party are going to do about that particular policy. But yeah, you're right. His pitch on his... because he had a market stall, didn't he, I think?
Yeah.
His pitch... which obviously the rent would have been set by the local Labour Council. I don't imagine that's going to change one bit because they have a Green MP.
I can't remember the market stall rent getting debated in the Houses of Parliament anytime.
No,
and I didn't think he's probably reported that his sister got chatted up on
somebody down at the council offices.
You know, Ian, I have suffered the SNP in Scotland for near 2 decades now. But that guy just I nearly crashed the car on the way home.
That's right. Well, listen, you've only got 10 weeks till May the 7th, George, and then, of course, it could all change.
On a slightly serious note, I always thought that reform could fix this country. I'm starting to wonder now whether it's fixable, and this is the country we've got now for the next God knows how long. Yeah?
2 millennia. It might well be that, George. You've been brilliant, and yeah, you corpsed me like an absolute good one there. Thank you, George in Dundee. But yeah, are we destined just to be this kind of slightly rudderless, bizarre place, the upside-down world for the next 500 years? Voice of Doom on a lighter note. Who is this?
Expertise and knowledge.
87222, if you think you know. Here's the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. Coming up on 3 minutes after 3 o'clock right here on Talk. Lots to get through. Obviously, we're reacting to the by-election last night, Gorton and Denton. It was a result for the Greens, Reform coming second, Labour third, the Tories a very, very, very distant fourth. It was not a great day for all the other parties either. But of course, what does this mean in the wider scheme of things? Your thoughts, your response. What is our takeaway from that by-election? At the same time, of course, as you've been hearing, Reform have reported the system to the police. They're alleging cheating in the election. This apparently is to do with something called family voting, where you can take a family, well, you can't, but a family member goes into the booth with you. That's not allowed. It is illegal. Apparently, those that keep their eye on this stuff spotted this 15 locations out of 22, which is significant. Where does that story go next? And the Ministry of Defence has asked Parliament for an extra £2.5 billion to fund Afghan asylum schemes, including the Afghanistan response route, which resettles nationals who were put at risk by that MOD data breach. You might remember that. It was an absolutely outrageous thing that happened there, but of course it meant many people were able to come and settle here for their own security and safety. 0344 499 1000. Voice of Doom coming up shortly. Have we got a winner? Let's find out in about 10 minutes' time. A couple of texts coming in as well. Fern says, so much for Ed Davies saying they were on the up after the general election. That guy clearly needs to get out and do more bungee jumping and zip slides. I think he probably does. Rob in Burnley says, disappointed that Matt Goodwin didn't get elected last night, as he would have raised the average IQ in Parliament, in my opinion. Long term, though, this could well be the beginning of the end for the Greens. People that see them as fluffy, harmless option for lack of any knowledge or interest in politics will hopefully get engaged and take voting seriously. I think, and to be fair, Keir Starmer did also call them an extreme party. I don't think that's entirely unfair if we are allowed to use the word extreme in its context within the spectrum of the parties we have in this country. So you've got, what people would say is reform over there. So you've got the Conservatives and Labour, Conservatives slightly to the right of Labour, not by much, it seems. And then to the right of reform, to the right of the Conservatives, you've got reform, and then advance and restore Britain, etc. But broadly, within this context, reform. And then at the other end of the scale, of course, you've got Labour and you've got the Lib Dems, and then you've got the Greens. Now, I would say on that spectrum, the Greens are further to the left than reform is to the right. And it's funny how that gets missed. I find that fascinating, how that doesn't quite get the same, doesn't have the same currency in the debate on these things. You often talk about you watch Question Time, and Fiona Bruce might describe somebody as a right-wing speaker, but you don't often get left-wing speaker in the same way. And I would put the voices of people like Hannah Spencer and certainly that character Zach Polanski, I would put them definitely on the extreme left. There's no doubt about that. And I think, by the way, just in the interest of democracy, they would wear that as a badge of honour. 0344 499 1000. We've got that figure again, which just keeps on climbing, that nearly 1 million 16 to 24-year-olds are not working or in education. It forces one very simple question. Why? What is going on? We'll talk to Ryan Saby shortly, economics editor at The Sun. First, Roman Dibden, youth employment expert. Roman, good afternoon to you. And it does seem that I haven't got the full list of how this has risen over the last 10 years or so, but certainly each time we look, it goes up again. I don't see it going down very often. Firstly, would that be true? And secondly, what on earth is going on?
Hi, Ian. Great to join you. Yeah, absolutely, that would be true. And I'm always concerned when we band around these figures of almost 1 million young people unemployed. It's certainly headline grabbing, but actually it's really detrimental for young people that are on the ground, but also for the economy as a whole. And I believe a lot of the issues stem around access to employment, and that transition point from education to the workplace is really fragile at the moment.
Yeah, I hear more and more conversations. Arguably, I know we live in a sort of 24-hour media cycle now, and social media has kind of rammed that home even more. But I seem to be hearing more conversations from students who've actually gone to university, they've gone through the whole degree, they've come out with 50 grand's worth of debt, and they cannot get a job for love nor money. So this isn't just about lazy old gits that sit there watching loose women on the sofa every afternoon with a bit of toast between their toes, waiting for the pubs to open. It's not that. I mean, I'm sure there are some of that, but there's some of that in every demographic, I guess. But in this case, when you've got people who have been in education and can't get a job, and an expensive education to the point they've got a big debt, then if we're seeing an increase in that particular part of this figure, that's deeply concerning.
100%, and I'm a big believer in there's got to be accountability here. You know, we're all well kind of shipping young people off to university and encouraging those in FE to apply for university placements as backup options.
Yep.
Student Finance England are happy to tie them into their loans and take the money. But where is the accountability for the universities in terms of that? I think it's almost 700,000 young graduates that are unemployed. So I think the misconception is, like you say, them lazy buggers that are out there with toes between the toes. I quite like that analogy.
Yeah,
but
it's a nice image, isn't it?
The large majority that I see are young people that are absolutely desperate to work, that are applying for 150, 200 roles to absolutely no avail. And despite these ONS statistics at almost 1 million, young people feel like it's only them and they've got something wrong with themselves.
Is there another part of this equation that isn't quite in the department of the toast between the toes analogy, as it will be now known forever, it seems, of people who just think, well, what is the point? Why am I working? Why do I want to work minimum wage for X amount of time? I'm never going to be able to buy a house on that. And that group are more aware, you know, perhaps years and years ago, when people were not self-analysing in the same kind of way, life was a bit cheaper, even if you were on the lower rungs of the financial ladder. Now everyone's aware of how poor they are. Everyone's aware, really aware. It's writ large all over the place. You know, if you're on a minimum wage right now, you are never going to own a house. That's a fact. And that kind of thinking, is that partly responsible for this, do you sense? Is there could be some of this group who are just thinking, why? Why would I bother?
I think the big challenge is policy obviously operates in isolation sometimes, and we've got to look at kind of household income as a whole. And certainly, you know, if a young person going into work is going to make the overall household a lot worse off, then what is the incentive for them going into work? Now, I've seen, you know, Rachel Reeves has come out and made a comment around, you know, if young people don't engage with the youth guarantee, we're going to strip their benefits away. Well, why don't we apply a common sense approach here and look at how we can incentivize young people making that transition into the world of work? And also, I'm often asked about kind of the minimum wage increases and the proposals there. I really feel for employers at the moment because there's a lot of scrutiny on them. They get a lot of bad press, but ultimately they're asking the right questions. You know, they want to support young people genuinely, but actually it's so very difficult for them to do that because they're being contacted from all angles, expected to host work experience to T-level, to create apprenticeship opportunities. So actually we've got to really look at the support mechanisms that can be put in place for both them and the young person trying to transition.
Indeed. Listen, great stuff. Lovely to have you on, Roman. We will speak again, I hope, because this is a subject where give it a couple of months and that figure will have increased again. And then you start to get into sort of really worrying territory. This is just 18 to 24, so it's just 8-year difference. A million, nearly a million youngsters not in work or education. How sustainable is that going forward? Ryan Saby is economics editor over there at The Sun. Afternoon to you, Ryan. I was saying to our last guest there, I mean, this just seems to be every couple of weeks we get this data come through. You see it as well in your job as an economics journalist. It's always going up, right? You never see, oh, great, we've solved the problem. There's no youth unemployment. We saw the figures last week that they'd increased again. And it seems that this isn't just about kids that are students, because this is, you know, people who are not any longer students. So arguably it's a wide spectrum of reasons, but the overarching number should disturb any government.
Yeah, you'd be extremely, extremely worried. And I think one of the key things, and I was up with the Welfare Secretary Pat McFadden yesterday up in Preston, where we spoke to lots of apprentices, people who want to get onto work experience too. And I think one of the key sort of messages that he wanted to get across is to sort of break the link between those who are sort of on benefits or not into work, and actually making sure you catch them sort of early in the process before they're on that for too long. And also sort of break the link between just getting people into work, get them understanding that just because you may be on benefits doesn't mean you always have to be on them. You can use your skills, what skills you do have, what skills you have that are available or useful to an employer to get actually working. So it doesn't just have to mean that if you are claiming anything or you're not in education or training, you can't do anything. you can. And I think that's one thing that the government wants to tap into.
It's interesting, tapping into it, saying we're aware of it, and all these great, statements that are made. And, if Rachel Reeves, or, as you say, you were with Pat McFadden yesterday, and Keir Starmer even, all of those people would talk about, yes, we are determined to solve this problem. But it does appear there is a sort of an irredeemable journey northwards. And I don't say that just to be kind of cynical or deliberately obtuse in recognising that, because I understand lots of young kids, want to work. We know some may struggle with the concept, but many, certainly postgraduates, etc., want to get into the workplace. So there's a genuine issue here, but you are forced to wonder, Ryan, is there anything literally they can do, or do they just have to keep sort of wheeling out a new slogan or a mantra and kick it into the long grass?
Well, I think there are things they can do, and I think I'd point to one thing. Over the last year or so, this government has increased the national minimum wage. Now, that has really hit young people because, typically young people who are trying to get their first job or just some experience in the workplace, they tend to go into retail, leisure, hospitality. Now, that sector has been really, really hit by all sorts of things, whether it's, national insurance increases, business rates, and sort of the prospect of taking people on when they're going to be paid sort of that national minimum wage where it's that bit higher. So I think government has got to make a choice. If maybe, we want people to be paid a fair wage, but if it's a difference between getting your sort of foot on the ladder, on the work ladder, and not having anything, I just wonder at some point soon whether the government maybe just try and slow that down a little bit. So I can see something like that happening, but it's been extremely difficult. And this is without the onslaught of, you talk about graduates there, sort of, artificial intelligence and how that kind of, post 21, 22-year-old people, youngsters, that could be really devastating for a lot. So I think industry and youngsters have to adapt to this. It's going to be very, very difficult for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Indeed. While you're with us, Ryan, quick word, if you would. Your other hat, of course, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Big night last night. More significant than most by-elections, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, this really is. You obviously saw the Green victory, and I think one thing that Keir Starmer has been doing over the past year, 18 months, is almost at times trying to out-reform reform. But he's seen on the other side that it's the Green Party who perhaps hold the cards for some of his electoral success or otherwise. And I think there needs to be a big rethink in number 10. Real pressure on him. Angela Rayner says it's a wake-up call. He needs to be braver in his decisions. The unions kicking off as well. Backbenchers pretty much asking him to consider his position. Yeah. It's going to be a tough few weeks and months for him.
Certainly is. Ryan, thank you. Have a great weekend. Ryan Saby, he is Economics and Deputy Political Editor over at The Sun. Thank you to him. He's stuck, isn't he, though, Starmer, really? Because if he goes... he can't go any further left because that space has now been irreversibly occupied by the Green Party. It doesn't matter what you think. I mean, this Zach Polanski character is so woeful. Just so awful as an operator. And there's nothing about him... he doesn't command, he's not a mesmeric speaker, a great orator, none of that stuff. Doesn't matter. For some reason, the geeky guy is doing good in the polls. Hannah Spencer, I think, she's the new Green MP for that constituency. Do you know, I think she'd probably be a good constituency MP. If you go and knock on her door and say, all right, Hannah, I've got, the drains are blocked, the council are doing nothing, noisy neighbours, dog muck all over that I think she would be good at that. I'd imagine she'd be thoughtful and understanding of the plight of individuals. And by the way, most MPs, before they become MPs, have no idea of how many letters you get and phone calls. Relentless. You are talking hundreds or thousands a week on this stuff. So it's not easy to do that, just on that basic constituency level. Forget the stuff you might do in Westminster. But they do represent a certain contingent on the left now, the Greens. And Keir Starmer, there's no point in Keir Starmer trying to chase that, is there? Why would he? And if it's not the Greens, it's Jeremy Corbyn's new party. That space has got reserve on it. Over on the other side, of course, when it comes to the Tories going more to the right, That space has got reserve on it. So both the main parties, our most successful parties, the Tories, I think officially are the most successful political party on planet Earth. Think about that. And here they are, all compromised in this kind of bizarre pincer movement. We are going to talk more on the phones in a few moments' time. Should we do the voice of doom here quickly, Ryan, and see if we've got a winner? Did I say Ryan? Oh, we just spoke to Ryan, didn't we? Sorry. I'm getting my names all over the place. His name is Findus. It's Findus' name. In fact, we'll do the voice of doom in just a second, all right? Let's just wait for a second, because this is the voice. Have a listen to the voice. This is the voice we played you about half an hour ago.
Expertise and knowledge.
Who is that? Very simple question, but is it a simple answer? Let's find out if we have a winner in a few moments' time, right here on Talk.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Welcome back. Kevin O'Sullivan's here at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And Kev, of course, is now officially the new Drive presenter. I say officially, you know, Kev thinks officially he's the new Drive. He's got 5 days. He'll be all right. No, he's officially the Drive presenter. And he's back in fine form. He's always on fine form. He's incandescent. He's got a big old list of stuff he wants to get off his chest, including, of course, what happened last night. Kev's in to tell us more in about half an hour's time. Right, Voice of Doom. Did we get a winner on this? Let's have another listen to The Voice.
Expertise and knowledge.
Expertise and knowledge. Who is that? These are some of the guesses we had. Roy Hattersley, Willie Hamilton, Nicola Sturgeon, Roderick Campbell, Alistair Campbell, George Robertson, Harriet Harman, Ian Blackford, Robin Cook, Manny Shinwell. Is Manny Shinwell really a person? Finn's just checking it out. We have got a winner, though. On day 3, we've got a winner. Rich in Llanelli says Ian McCartney. And Ian McCartney, you may or may not remember him. He was a minister under Tony Blair in various roles. He was Minister of State for Pensions. He was Minister of State for the Cabinet Office. He was Minister of State for Competitiveness. Was that a ministry under Blair? He was Minister without portfolio. He was Chairman of the Labour Party, and he was Minister of State for Trade. He was a short guy. I only mention his height. I'm not body shaming anyone, but so as to try and identify him, so you might remember who he was. But yes, he's still around, still alive. British Labour politician Ian McCartney. Well done to Rich, who got that absolutely bang on. It means we've got a brand new one on Monday. Stand by. Richard is in North London. Richard, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hi, Ian. I actually think the voice of doom was Nigel Farage about 6 weeks ago, telling poor old Matt Goodwin that he was the choice for this by-election because they really thought they were going to win this. I think there were several lessons coming out of this. I don't think people are realising it. First of all, Matt Goodwin was pretty much Reform's great white hope, and now he's not so much a white hope as a dirty old T-shirt after a bad game of rugby on a Sunday afternoon. I think that's poor. There's something gone wrong there.
Well, you say that, but I mean, he did.
They're overconfident.
I mean, for Reform to get that close in that constituency is still a stonking result.
No, it's not, Ian.
How can it not be?
It's not. I'm sorry, it's not. But the trouble is, this is the central problem with them. They've been going around saying everything's broken, we're going to fix everything. Yeah. But actually, they still seem to think that's all they need to do. I go back to their unveiling of Jenrick and Braverman a few weeks ago. It was like the SDP. They somehow seem to think that that's all they've got to do. Because here's the problem. If you're going to go around saying Britain is broken, and that's what they had been saying, and of course that's partly how Starmer got in. If Britain is broken, then naturally people are going to turn towards more radical parties like the Greens. Because, for instance, I looked at Richard Tice's economic statement earlier this week, which really amounts to not much more than they're going to merge all the all the local government pension funds and create a sort of national investment bank, basically, which will invest in things over time. Now, Ian, that idea. First of all, that idea was recommended most recently first by Tony Blair and then by Rachel Reeves. But actually that idea, and you'll know this, Ian, this goes back to Howard Wilson. It's a 50-year-old idea.
It's bubbled away from it. Yeah, but maybe is Richard Tice's position not, well, everyone's talked about it, no one's done it? Or are you saying there's a good reason they haven't done it?
Well, that's one. The reason Margaret Thatcher abandoned the idea was she said, well, hold on, we've had the state running things for 50 years and we've got unions closing down companies and you've got British Leyland. Yeah. I mean, Ian, this is not even Groundhog Day. This This is going back to the dinosaurs.
I hear what you're saying,
but got to do better.
But Richard,
really do.
I mean, it still comes, but whatever way you slice it, because they didn't win, and they thought they had a big chance. Although, as a couple of callers mentioned at the beginning, actually, if you'd followed the bookmakers, they all had a Green Party win from the off. So
why did they select the Great White Hope? Because they must have written...
Because I think they thought he will get closer than anyone. And bearing in mind, this was their 440th target seat. So it was right down the list.
Ian, I mean, it is... I sometimes feel at the moment, and it's been this way for a couple of years. I mean, you actually said a few weeks ago something about how the country feels like it's kind of losing its head. And I feel actually anybody trying to talk sense you feel you are banging your head against a brick wall, because actually, for instance, people have now got into this broken Britain mindset. So, for instance, when you remind people that actually we're the second biggest service economy in the world, which amazed me, it doesn't chime with this kind of voice of doom, approach to politics.
So you think we need less doom?
I think reform have got to think very seriously about something transformative. Because look, Thatcher came into power at the end of the 70s, and she had very clear ideas.
She did.
Even Blair had clear ideas. But when you look at what Thatcher had council house sales. Thatcher had reversing nationalisation, turning it into privatisation.
Yep.
You know all the stuff about sort of Sid's going to,
Sid, tell Sid.
Yes, but the point is, Ian, it worked. And the trouble is, if all reform are going to do is dust off 50-year-old policies, I mean, it's embarrassing. But they've also, there's something about the candidate selection, because I think, Lila Cunningham, she walked off Piers Morgan's show the other day over an interview. It's something about it. It seems like Farage is selecting all the candidates. Now that is a recipe for trouble, because he's not a team player. He's already fallen out with Rupert Lowe.
But he also, you say he's not a team player. I mean, was Tony Blair a team player, really?
Yes, he was.
Well, to a degree. I mean, I think that many of the people in that last term of office, we keep talking about this Blair documentary that was on, one of the reasons he had to leg it before the term had completed was because there was a sense he wasn't a team player.
Yeah, but that was after 11 years in. And the point is, he worked with Gordon Brown, who was one of the most difficult people you could ever work with. Yeah. I mean, it's more the sense that they just not think that there's a real sense that they think they've just got to turn up and everybody's going to say, "Have you got the answer?"
I think to be fair to reform, though, I mean, if we were 6 weeks away from a general election, I think your point would resonate in a different way. But this is at the moment, this is part of their journey, isn't it? I mean, they are a new party.
Ian, they've got nothing for young people. I mean, I've been thinking about this quite a lot. We're asking young people to take out a student loan. It's going to be around £40,000. Yeah. Okay, so you got to get a degree, you've got to get a 40k loan. Then you've got to try and get a deposit somewhere in the southeast for a lot of people, which is another 50 or 100. Now, If you're presenting young people with that sort of deal, I don't blame them for saying, okay, let's try a bit of communism, because this is never going to work.
It's never going to work. I tell you what, if Kemi Badenoch came up with a radical policy for student loans and the whole repayment scheme, and she has talked about it before she got hijacked by Martin Lewis the other day, but if she really went for it so it was digestible, everyone went, wow, then that's a corner turn, a huge corner turn for the Conservatives. They've got to keep doing a lot of that. You're right, but listen, I've got to move, Richard. Thank you. It's a great call. And I love calls that provoke another conversation, which I think Richard did there. I'm going to cut Reform some slack on this, because I know what he's saying. You could argue Reform have been able to dine out on, like, common sense, tell it like it is, we're not the Tories, we're the real deal. And then, of course, the real business starts. When you start fighting significant elections, as we saw last night. But they know that. It's not like they thought they were always going to have this one-way street, this big green light that was forever in their favour. They know there's going to be hurdles and bumps in the road, and that tests them. It means they adapt and adopt, etc. So I don't think this is any great shock to Reform that this might have happened. But I do come back to what I said to Nigel right at the beginning. you know, they did come second in a seat that was 440th or something on their target list. It really wasn't anywhere near anything they thought. They beat Labour and the Conservatives. In fact, they beat all the other parties combined. So I think if you're an analyst on this stuff, I think you'd see that as a pretty good result if you are Reform. Terrible result if you're Labour, of course, who've run this seat forever. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Brian in Dorset says, how many of these idiot students voting for anarchists in Manchester are also registered to vote in their home constituencies? Yes, probably a lot of that. I mean, I suppose... Well, yeah, but it's full of students, it's full of this group, that group, etc. You can kind of apply that anywhere, can't you, to different different constituencies that have stronger or larger demographics of different types. You know, you go to an area that's got an older population, you'll probably find more old Tories in that neck of the woods, but I hear it. This one comes in from Margaret, who says, Nigel Farage is right to investigate the family voting. It's illegal and if not challenged will keep happening. Why didn't the officials stop it? Says Margaret. Yeah, I don't know how that works. I mean, was there not one official that stopped it in any of these examples? Remember, these were kind of, I don't know what the official name is, but this wasn't Reform politicians or people that spotted it. This was the electoral spotters who are there to see this happening. Now, how much was going on? Was it happening on an industrial scale in 15 out of 22 places that they spotted it? Was it the odd example of a man walking with his wife into the polling booth, which seems to be the sort of archetypal description of what we're hearing? 0344 499 1000. Let's just move to this story. The statue of Winston Churchill in Parliament Square has been defaced with pro-Palestinian graffiti. The words "Free Palestine," "Zionist war criminal," and "Globalise the Intifada" were written across the statue of the former Prime Minister in Westminster overnight. Let's get a word from Richard Toy, host of Churchill, the Finest Half Hour. Richard, nice to have you with us. I don't like to see any statue defaced. It's it's our history, and it's part of us, and you know, history isn't always pretty. Even the challenging bits, even figures that I see cast in beautiful stone that I think were a bit of a wrong, and once in a while you have to go, well, it's telling part of a story. But Churchill, I know some people will look at parts of Churchill's story and say he was a divisive character, but overarchingly, if you ask 2,000 people what does Churchill stand for, they would say he was a good bloke who won the war, and that's why we're not a fascist country speaking German.
Sure that you would certainly get a lot of people saying that. I mean, I think that you're right, of course, that he is a divisive character now, but he was a divisive character in his own lifetime for a number of different reasons, some of which were to do with his intervention or desire for intervention in the Russian Civil War, the general strike, and so on. Of course, many of those, much of that antipathy did fade away to a great extent during the Second World War, but never entirely. I think probably in the last 10 years of his life, after he'd retired, after he was no longer active in politics, particularly around the time of his funeral, then that was probably the sort of the high watermark of pro-Churchill sentiment. But, you know, probably in the late 60s and early 70s, there was sort of growing hostility as well, not involving, I should say, defacing statues.
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, you can pull that out. Again, this Blair documentary that we keep talking about over the last few days that I watch, you know, Blair, obviously a man very much defined by Iraq. He pretty much couldn't turn up at his own book launch because he was so unpopular. And essentially that would be still the case today. Margaret Thatcher, whether it strikes, whatever the case. But, you know, you have to look at a wider picture historically when you want to take a snapshot of what defines someone. And I guess globally speaking, if you asked a group of people, you know, name a great leader, Churchill's would come out at the top time and time again.
Well, of course, it would depend which country you were asking. If you were to say that in the United States, there definitely there's kind of sort of bipartisan support there, perhaps even more support in the United States than in the UK.
Parts of the Middle East, not so much.
But parts of the Middle East, in India, definitely not so much, definitely not Ireland as well. I mean, I think it's probably worth mentioning that we're now at least on sort of the third iteration of defacing this particular statue. Back in 2000, there was anti-globalization protests where sort of red paint was coming out of his mouth to sort of represent blood, and a kind of Mohican made out of grass. Just a few years ago, somebody scrawled Churchill was a racist again in red paint across the bottom. And I mean, you made a good point earlier that there are an awful lot of statues, not only in London but throughout the country, often of some pretty sort of controversial people. And but Churchill gets selected, I think, because of his kind of global flame, because it is known that doing this will cause outrage. And I mean, I would say, of course, that people have got the right to make statements about Churchill and their opinions of him. But of course, it is possible to do that in a way which doesn't involve the taxpayer having to fund cleaning the paint.
Well, indeed. I mean, the easiest way to deal with that is to get the person that did it to clean it off, frankly. But I mean, that's I don't think it tends to work like that. But you know, rather than wasting court time and jails, just go, look, here's a big mop, mate. It's going to take you 10 hours. Good luck. Go. But it does. You're right. It does seem this particular statue has become almost totemic in the which statue can we go for? I do wonder sometimes, when people, we all know that agitators in this case, one would assume somebody who perhaps politically bats from the left. I'm looking at the slogans: Free Palestine, Zionist war criminal, globalise the Intifada. I think many people would struggle to say they're all applicable specifically to Churchill.
Well, I mean, of course, he was a supporter of the Zionist cause, for sure. And he kind of was maybe less enthusiastic about it from about 1944 onwards, when there were Zionist terrorist actions which killed a friend of his, Lord Moyne. But broadly speaking, he was sort of much more pro-Jewish in the Palestine situation, and quite sort of negative towards Arabs. So to describe him as a Zionist is not wrong.
It's also quite anti-Semitic as well, though, isn't it? Because it suggests there's something wrong with being a Zionist.
Well, I mean, it's clear that whoever's done this has got obviously a very sort of militant pro-Palestinian view, and I would say that it's not really something that's very unlikely to provoke sympathy or additional support for sort of the Palestinian cause, because it makes the supporters of this look extreme. It makes them look as though they don't support the rule of law, etc., and rather than expressing themselves in a sort of conventional way, are going to, as I say, kind of cause damage, which has to be undone at the public expense.
Yeah, I mean, you can write Free Palestine on, wherever you like, in the sense of, as long as it's legal. And the phrase in itself is not illegal. I mean, some people do perhaps pedantically pick up on the words Free Palestine as to what it actually means, if it means anything at all. Globalise the Intifada, that's a little trickier, of course, because that gets into slightly different territory.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I suppose that sort of looking at this in historical terms, this is the first time that, although, as we were saying, it's been kind of defaced before, clearly it's a different reason or a different motivation. There's kind of sort of ballpark arguments, I suppose, in that previously people have sort of regarded presented Churchill as being a war criminal, which that aspect is not new. But I suppose what it means is that Churchill is a kind of lightning rod for whatever current controversy happens to be, at the top of the agenda. In other words, if there wasn't a war going on in the Middle East, then somebody might well be defacing this with a different kind of slogan about a different crisis.
Listen, great to have you on, Richard. Really appreciate your time. Richard Toy, he is the host of Churchill, the finest half hour is the podcast. You can check that out. I do find it, I mean, Blair is the more modern example of a man who, whatever Blair did in the sense of anything you would see as being good, or the likes of Alistair Campbell will always, reel out independence of Bank of England, minimum wage, the New Deal, whatever, all of these things you can put on the list. Nothing will ever usurp or overshadow the Iraq War. And even, that divides people as well. So that's a very, the guy is still with us and still very vocal and still very active politically, domestically and globally. The Churchill stuff, I'm always kind of, to a degree, the Thatcher stuff as well. It's just very easy, isn't it, firstly, to judge opinions and views and political decisions that were taken 100 years ago, and to judge them in the, if you like, in the modern day context. Now, I know good historians go, no, we've allowed for the context, and even allowing for the context, this person, this duke or this prime minister did something terrible. When you are the prime minister, naturally, you're going to make a lot of decisions that so many people will not like very much. I'm not here to defend Churchill. I couldn't claim to know enough about his backstory. The historian Richard we just had on clearly is more engaged in that, and he can see why there are clearly a whole load of question marks. I wonder, given the time and the context of decisions that were made back then, which were quite brutal. There was a lot of things in our history were quite brutal, whether it's sticking kids up chimneys, women's rights, or a lack of women's rights, lack of men's rights, for that lack of anyone's rights. It wasn't, part of the hierarchical, sort of aristocratic top echelons of everything. Hardly anybody had a right, if the truth be known. So, yeah, bad stuff used to happen. No one's defending it. Just interesting that a half-wit decides, I know what I'll do. I'll write globalise the Intifada on a statue, because that'll end well, won't it? It didn't, and an arrest has been made. Back to your calls. Khalid in Leicester. What have you got, Khalid? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
I think it's not so much as what the Green Party is doing. I think it's what Conservative and Labour have been doing.
Not a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing, which I think what they are doing, I can't them as dictatorships. They are not doing what the public want from them. Mm-hmm. They are not. There's nothing solid you can say that yes, they have done this fantastically well. In fact, on the contrary, I think the majority of the people, these marches, they're not hate marches. The marches that have been going on, against the Gaza, against what's happening in Gaza. This is a contrary to what the public want, what is happening actually there. And it continues, and it's been continuing even after the so-called ceasefire. So, Ian, the thing is, look, the mainstream parties, they all say they are friends of Israel. Is that Israel which is killing on a daily basis? That Israel which is all documented? They're raping prisoners inside prisons. They are taking away their land. even in the West Bank, they continue to ethnically cleanse the land of
yeah, I mean, there is no ethnically cleansing, but there is clearly a response that they continue to give after they were attacked with the greatest terrorist attack they've ever experienced. So you could look at it that way as well, Carly, couldn't you?
So if that's the greatest terrorist attack
that they have experienced,
so what about the Palestinians? Do we not count them as human beings? Do we say that they?
I don't think anybody, including Israelis, want to see Palestinians die, and they might want to see Hamas die, and there's a lot of that going on out there.
No,
but generally speaking,
no, I think you're wrong there, Ian.
You think people want to see Palestinians die?
Have you spoken to her?
Sorry, I didn't hear what your line cut out literally at that point, Carly.
Daniela Weiss, have you heard of her?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, you know what she's about. You know what and the people that back her, you know what they're about. They are saying this is our God-given land. We don't care what happens to the planet. They can stay.
Well, okay, I mean, it is their land, but that's another story, and it's a big old...
It is their land.
It is their
land. It is their... You mean in 1948 when they came and killed over 15,000
well,
people?
I tell you what, many Israeli commentators and students of history of that region will actually say it goes way back before 1948. I mean, it's a big old region. I'm not suggesting it's not complicated, Khalid, and I'm absolutely not defending anyone who dies. I'm aware, you know, you look at the absolute carnage of the Palestinian region. It is horrific. But no, you don't have to be on any side to be able to objectively spot the horrors of all of that. But what I struggle is to define it when you have a first world civilized democracy against a medieval death cult. I find it really tricky. It really tests me, strangely, that I would in any shape or form come down on the side of the medieval death cult. That's kind of where I largely am on this. But you're right, nuances and tragedy shouldn't really have any politics in this respect. I get you. Khalid, thank you. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Margaret in Birmingham says, did you know Hannah is a plumber? This is Hannah Spencer, the new MP for Gorton and Denton. She is a plumber. She was a plumber. She apologised to her customers for getting elected because she's probably going to have to put off those radiator jobs. So that goes well with my dad was a toolmaker, says Margaret. True. And Reform should ask questions about the family vote. It is illegal, so why did the officials not stop it? It will keep happening. It's utterly bizarre that this family vote thing, they found, you know, they believe the observers saw it in 15 of 22 locations. That's pretty high, right? It's not like we think we saw it, you know, once or twice. 15 of 22. Matthew's in Newport. Matthew, what have you got? Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to go back to the Gorton and Denton by-election result.
Yes.
I was actually quite surprised because if you look at the percentage figures, and I think whether or not it's actually done on purpose by your party, it's almost, you said that Reform got as much of the percentage vote as all of the rest put together.
Yes.
Well, they did. But the surprising fact is they still got 25% of the vote.
Yeah, they did. I mean, all the rest, I should also, just to clarify as well, Matthew, all the rest put together isn't a particularly high number. So, but it's still nonetheless, that's how you could look at it. So 25% of the vote, yeah. I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, what I make from that really is I would probably class as, to your listeners, a sort of left-wing lovey or whatever, but I'm a socialist at heart. The thing is, I think they've still got a strong core base because their strong core base, because I'm not voting for them, I wouldn't vote for them at the moment, their strong core base is 25%, and pulling all the stops out, Reform got 29. The Green Party, that is a massive protest vote, and I probably would do the same in the Welsh elections coming up.
Yeah, you could be right. Do you think then Labour would sneak back in if it was a general election?
Well, that's the point. You said earlier, you know, Reform sort of, the Labour Party were the Green Party were trying to get the Muslim vote. Well, the Reform Party aren't exactly ingratiating themselves to brown people, are they?
No, I think if you are brown or if you're Muslim, you'd probably, you might well shut the door on any party that is, you know, clearly to the right, certainly to the right of the Labour Party. That's fair enough. And of course, a lot of what Reform talk about is about immigration and their views on it, which clearly wouldn't play well in a certain community. But they would be unapologetic about that. They would say, look, it's not about being racist. We're just giving you a view of how we see this country surviving. We don't want to get rid of all these people.
Yeah, that's from how we see it. And what they're doing is that they're promulgating sort of division and.
But is it how do you have the conversation without someone accusing you of creating division?
Well, I can tell you exactly how, and it's how Reform don't do it.
Go on.
That was how you do it. You do it in a manner that Reform don't do it.
But here's the thing. Reform are now being seen as the party, because now Rupert Lowe is on the scene, whose views on things like deportations are far more robust than Reform's. So Reform are now being seen as the... You know, Nigel Farage gave that speech and said you can't just deport people. It's inhumane, it's not right, it's not moral.
I know. But it's great, isn't it? Because I love seeing the right-wing press and the right-wing voters squirming now the right-wing vote has been split. I mean, that's happened to the Labour left-wing vote since whenever.
It really has.
Can I make one point?
Yeah, briefly if you can, Matthew.
Briefly. A friend of mine who I work with, he came over on a boat in the back of a lorry when he was 17. And he got snuck in by his grandparents. His dad was in prison at the time in Iraq. He's a Kurd. He came over here. He learned and did his A-levels while learning to speak English. So he did even come here, because most people come here because we populate the world with English speakers, India, for example. And he came over here. He's now got a master's degree. He's working in the defence industry towards a PhD. And that bloke is an absolute role model to anybody. And he came over illegally.
He should be deported in that case.
Well, he would play that. He's an actor.
No, I hear you.
Well, not joking.
I know, but you see, that's exactly... Yeah, but what you've just articulated there is bang on, Matthew. That's exactly the kind of person... I forget the method of how he got here, but in terms of his hard-working, his learning the language and getting himself a proper gig, that's exactly the kind of person, when people talk about immigration, that I don't think anybody objects to. Great call, Matthew. Kevin O'Sullivan is here. However, nothing on the news agenda today, Kev, as they always say.
Not very much, no. We will be trying to get the truth about the alien autopsy, the very famous alien autopsy.
Yeah, I saw something about it. Louis threw in...
Yeah, Louis Theroux's making a documentary about it, and the guy who filmed it, all those space freaks who like to believe in all this stuff, it's a bit of a problem, because the guy who filmed it is just saying, it's a complete fake. I did it at a flat in Camden.
In Camden? That's why I read that.
So we'll try and unravel the truth about the autopsy.